Good morning. We'd like to welcome everybody here today. We would, if you will please stand, we will have the pledge and the invocation. Commissioner Jones.
Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your guidance as we make important decisions today. God, we're talking about restore projects and even a new direction for Walden County, so give us wisdom as we go forth. And Lord, I pray, Lord, for the people in the north that are going through such cold, horrible situations with their weather. Keep the airport safe and those people that are going through this. And we're just so thankful that we live in Florida and that we don't have as much snow. And we ask, God, that you give us wisdom again in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you will for me at this time, if you have anything that beeps or makes noise of any kind, would you please turn it off? It's not only disruptive to us and to the recorder, but to the people around you. I'd like to recognize some special guests. I believe we have officials from the city of Defuniak Springs here. I'm sorry, the older I get, the harder it is to see. But I do want to recognize in the front row Kim Kirby, who used to be city manager of the city of Defuniak Springs. It's so good to see her. So everyone at this time, we welcome you. We will consider the additions and deletions to the agenda. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, we have a request from Clayton Atkinson, attorney for the city of Defuniak, regarding the agenda item on the roads and bridges and the county roads within the city limits. He is requesting us to delay any discussion or action on that for 30 days to allow us more opportunity to interact with the city. Told him I would ask the board for your thoughts. We're certainly fine with continuing that discussion. There are a number of things that are in play, and we're not in any rush to get it done, but it's certainly at your discretion whether you'd like to continue that discussion today or allow us to continue to work with Mr. Atkinson. I believe from his perspective, he was recently got involved with it from the city and would like to have a little more time to review what they've put together, what we've put together, so he could have some better direction in advising his city council. So that would be our first question, is whether you'd like to continue that until the next meeting here in Defuniak, or go ahead and hear it today.
I think it would be nice just to go ahead and give them more time. There's no money involved, and it kind of caught them by surprise. So I think I'm all for giving them an additional 30 days.
Yeah, I think it's important to get all the information.
Okay.
Okay. So I make a motion we give them another 30 days, or do we need a motion?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion among the crowd? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, okay. But we're still under addition and deletions to the agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Under Public Works, we're going to...
Let's hold on just a minute.
Okay.
I see we're going to have a mass exit, so let's wait. Thank y'all for coming. Stay around. It gets lively. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You can't hear us? Okay. Yeah. Can you hear us in the back? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you forget you got to get right on top of these things. All right, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Just going to add under Public Works, just some updates for the transit study and the 38 traffic analysis update, and under the county attorney to appoint members of the audit committee per Section 218.391 of Florida statutes for the purpose of carrying out their necessary duties to select a new auditing firm to complete audit of the county required by Section 218.13 Florida statutes. And those are our additions.
All right.
Motion to approve the agenda with additions and deletions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. At this time, we have public comment. If anyone would like to come up and comment on anything that is on the agenda at this time. Yes, ma'am. Come forward, please. State your name for the record, and if you will spell your last name. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Pickett. I'm a resident of Walton County. I own properties in both the north and the south, so I'm really conversant with the issues of this very diverse county. I've been looking at the report for the Economic Development Alliance, and I do have some questions and concerns about that. First of all, I would like to encourage Walton County to think of itself as a community. We have failed to do that. We tend to be warring neighbors, but we need to start thinking of ourselves as a community and work towards that goal. Further, we need to think about change and be receptive to change. That has not been a common thread throughout our community in the past, and we really need to look at change, accept change, and go find it. I've been trying to do that for 40 years around here. The Economic Development Alliance is a good thing, but it's not a big thing. In your budget, it is a very, very small thing. I have looked at budgets for surrounding counties. Bay County has $500,000 in their budget. They have 3 full-time staff people. Okaloosa County has 6 people, 3 of whom are full-time, 2 independent contractors, and 1 part-time. We can't do economic development on the level this county needs with the kind of money that we're allocating for it. Additionally, Bay County gets $20,000 a year from their TDC. We don't get anything. TDC, tourist development, not only brings visitors, it brings economy throughout the county. So I think we should ask for some of that TDC money to be shifted towards economic development. I know the TDC is absolutely rolling in it. So we want some of that for economic development. We do not have the funds that we need to do the kind of search that we need, retain the kind of personnel with the skills, both business skills and IT skills, that we need for economic development. We have almost no clerical support. We don't even really have an office. So I have grave concerns about this. I'd like to go over some of the issues in the budget. I can do that individually with the EDA if you prefer.
At this time, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I apologize, Ms. Pickett. I didn't look in that direction. So good to have you with us.
Thank you very
You
much.
know.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to see you again. Or anyone else under public comments? Seeing none, do we have any items on the consent agenda that you want to pull for further consideration? All right. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. As I go, next we have the Waste Management EAL.
I want to acknowledge my conflict of interest. I filed a proper form with the clerk.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Waste Management EAL. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item, our agenda is, let me find it.
Find our,
Is a request from Amy Stoles with the 30A 10K Inc. to close both lanes of a portion of Highway 38 from Rosemary Beach to Watersound Bridges entrance for the 30A 10K on November 24th, 2016. They have the approval of the Sheriff's Office and the South Walton Fire with their conditions and requirements. We would recommend your approval.
Second.
we have a motion and second. Is there any discussion among the board? Anyone in the audience like to say anything? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. we've had several discussions here at the board and individually with the property owner regarding the Eastern Lake property on San Roy Road that has been made available to the county. If you recall, we had a couple of appraisals done, and the asking price was substantially higher than the appraisals. We've had some discussion with the owner of the property, and he's agreed to a few things that may be to our advantage. One, he has reduced his selling price a little bit, not a whole lot, but he's offered to finance the property for a period of 10 years with no interest. There are some other things he's asking for, and we've had some discussions on those, and we'll have further discussion if it's the board's desire to move forward. The price for the property that we believe we can purchase it is between $3.5 and $3.7 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So with him financing it over the period of, 10 years, we'd be looking for $350,000 to $370,000 a year to acquire this property. It's there in your board book. It's laid out. It's immediately east of the current county easement that we utilize when we have to open the outfall of Eastern Lake. It's a beautiful piece of beachfront property that we believe the county could make good use of. Quite frankly, they're not making any more of this, and it's harder and harder to find parcels to purchase. So while the price is considerably higher than the appraised value, we think it would probably be in the county's best interest to move forward at least with further discussions to purchase it. But before we do that, we wanted to make sure that that the selling price would not be objectionable. If we can get the financing in place, as he indicated, so we'd pay 10 equal annual payments of between $350,000 and $370,000.
Is this to come from TDC funds?
Yes, sir.
What was the appraisal value?
One was under $2 million, and one was right at $2 million, I believe.
Do you know if we've checked with the neighbors on the other side of the lake? And I've been meaning to do that. They had property for sale.
We have not, but if with direction, we'd be glad to do that.
We definitely need some, because when the lake swirls in the wrong way, you're actually getting out of it on property. So I'd like to check with the neighbors on the other side, Bill Head and some of those, to see if they're still willing to sell and see how their values, this is pretty high.
And I tend to agree it is high, and I'm usually cheaper than, but, if we could acquire this property and some more, as Larry says, they're not making any more beachfront, and as this county grows and our tourism industry grows, we've got to have a place for these people to come and use, or they're going to go somewhere else. So I personally would like us to go ahead and continue with this, and then let's do some research and if there's any more available adjacent to it or near it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've looked at the property. It's just a pristine white, large, huge beach, and it would be very accessible to bikers and walkers and from that eastern part of Eastern Lake. So, and like Larry said, we really haven't had people come forward with this large of a piece of property that's so desirable. So I think we should at least continue in negotiations with the owner and see if we can't bring something, some kind of firm agreement to the board to look at. So that would be my motion. Do I need a motion or?
Just think it's direction, I think.
Yeah,
Direction.
More than anything, just make sure that we understand that it's, $3.5 to $3.75 million. It's above the appraised price, but if that's something the board thinks that if under the right terms and conditions, we would find in the best interest of the county, we'd certainly move it forward and continue those discussions to bring you something back for a vote in the near future.
And if I'm not correct, Mr. Davis, it will take a supermajority.
Yes.
So, okay.
And we
and
will
also,
have those discussions with the
Yeah,
neighbors.
and also, too, there are some conditions that he is requesting that we need to make sure that we are all in agreement with, and so that would be part of the.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. When will we know what? I mean,
We'll contact the owner after the meeting today and see when
Okay.
he's available to sit down and see what we can hammer out.
Okay, very good.
All
Okay.
right? Next item has been removed from the agenda. Next item, Madam Chair, is a presentation from the engineering firms that have been narrowed down for the, in response to RFQ 016004 for County Road 183, which is Kidd Road. The three firms that will be presenting today is Atkins, Genesis, and Preble Rish. So we have notified those firms that each have 5 minutes to make a presentation and be prepared for questions from the board after that 5-minute presentation. Alphabetical order.
Alphabetical order, that's easiest.
Can I ask a question?
I can count.
Who are our three continuing service companies?
Atkins, Preble Rish, and Tetra Tech.
Okay, thanks.
All right, then first up, we have Atkins. You have 5 minutes, use
Great.
it wisely.
That will be a courtesy, but we can't make you leave.
Yeah.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Jeff Helms with Atkins. Our approach to improving the Kidd Road, County Road 183 North.
Yep, let me interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, and please start his time over. There is a scoring sheet in your board packet to score each of these firms. Yes, ma'am.
It's a long one.
So as you listen to their presentations, we'll ask you to mark those scores accordingly. They will be tallied up at the end to determine where we make the award.
Larry, can we just do a 1, 2, 3, or do we need to keep?
In order to be,
Okay.
yeah, we need some scores in each of those.
Okay.
I think that's by statute. Yes, sir.
Okay.
According to
I'm not
statute.
sure I can read that part.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
All right, Mr. Helms?
Well, good morning again. Atkins' approach to improving County Road 183 North and Kidd Road involves 4 items. Number 1, significantly improve safety. Number 2, enhance the drainage. Number 3, improve the rideability and smoothness by resurfacing the road. But number 4, make it the first 3 as cost efficient and effective as possible using experienced design team that's actually designed projects for Walton County. Let's talk about safety. We've already talked to the Highway Patrol and obtained their accident data, reviewed that. We intend to contact the Walton County Sheriff's Office. They know this road as well as anybody to get their feedback on improvements. We're going to contact the school board and specifically the bus routing folks, because I want to know where every single bus stop is located so I can put appropriate signage and I can get clear sight lines. It's critically important that we make those bus stops and some of those hidden curves as safe as humanly possible. Drop-offs. I hate drop-offs adjacent to the road. When I'm tired, that's when I run off the road and I correct. We're going to eliminate those drop-offs. It's very dangerous. Speed limit's 55. That's fine. We know on a 2-lane rural road, folks are going to drive fast out there. And the problem is that most of the roads that were built in the 1950s were not up to our current standards. So what we're going to do is just review the curves, the vertical curves, the horizontal curves, and see which ones are deficient and bring those up to standard or sign them. Now, if there's some hidden areas in those deficient curves, we may ask you to just lower the speed limit a little bit in short segments. But I don't want to lower the speed limit on the whole road because folks are going to drive 55. Clear zone. It's 18 feet for the 55 miles per hour, so we're going to remove the objects in the clear zone or shield it. The guardrails at Sandy Creek Bridge Culvert and Sandy Creek Bridge Culvert need to be removed and replaced, and the attenuators. Night driving. Studies have shown that if you put thermoplastic in the edge lane, that significantly improves night driving and safety, including additional signage. Rumble strips. Let's keep the rumble strips at US 90 and at County Road 183B. That really reinforces, tired drivers, they got kids they're dealing with things, and that helps reinforce those stopping locations. Passing lanes, the stripes down the center. We've done hundreds of those, so let's make sure they're as safe as possible for folks to get over and get back in their lane. Let's talk about drainage. We counted 94 side drains. Now, unfortunately, most of those were smashed and blocked. We need to re-enhance that side drainage. It's very important. We have a bridge, Sandy Creek Bridge, 2 bridge culverts, and 14 cross drains. Now, the cross drains, we're going to extend the head walls or create mitered in section to make those safer. Now, there's a couple of box culverts that y'all are doing a lot of maintenance on. We need to fix the scour and maybe even increase the size. That may be why it's scouring. So we need to do that to reduce long-term maintenance costs. The scour at the bridge areas also, we need to make sure we fix those so that you're not out there all the time fixing that after these heavy rains. Now, concrete ditches, there's some trees growing in the concrete ditches. We need to fix that. There's one area on the north third of the project where water's coming off the road. Even on a beautiful day, the water is draining off the road, and it goes and it crosses the road. And you can hydroplane in that area. So we've got to fix that. That's a minor thing, but you don't need hydroplaning on a clear day. The roadway condition. You know, the roadway itself is pretty good shape, so we would recommend no milling, but just, and save the cost of milling, put it on safety. But put an inch and a half of leveling. That will save the cost, and I think that will work out well. 10-foot lanes need to be upgraded as part of the scrap grant to 12-foot lanes. You don't need paved shoulders. But what we'll do is look at left, right, center, like we did on County Road 285. That's going to save thousands of dollars in construction costs. Now, costs. We know that your budget is $3.2 million for construction. We've already done a detailed estimate, preliminary estimate, and our estimate right now is real close to the $3.2 million, so we feel really good about that. The schedule, I know it's a grant, it's tight. We can finish this job 5 or 6 months, and well within your schedule. Atkins has maintained an office here in Walton County for many years, and we're proud to be here. We're very blessed to do work for Walton County. We've designed numerous projects, whether it's private, it's watercolors, water sound, Camp Creek, and all those type projects. We've done projects for the county. Did 331, the original one that got started. We've managed projects for the DOT in this county. So we have tremendous experience here. We've got a great design team that's experienced and done work for the county, and we're honored to be here. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yes, we have answer question time.
Okay, just a question. What is your all's project workload right now?
We're rolling off the 285. In fact, we got our intake. We're submitting it 100%. We got the core permit. So we've got a dip right now. We've got a team that's been working on the Walton County job 285, so they could easily roll into this. So we've got availability that I would really like to backfill if at all possible, and they're experienced in very similar roadway project.
Okay, and
references, I could give you references, Tommy Barfield and the county engineers throughout Northwest Florida. I've been doing this for 30 years, and we've got a great team that's done hundreds of miles of county roads, and we've been forced to do work for y'all.
right, okay. Now, how many road projects have y'all worked on, county road projects have you worked on?
Well, yeah, recently, we did the 4-laning of 331 from edge, from Owl's Head up. We did the second section, which we turned over to the DOT, and they're doing the design build project on right now. Okay. We did 1084. We're just finishing up 285. We managed 331 from the bridge up to 20, and we're doing a construction inspection on that particular project. Okay. We managed US 98 4-laning for the DOT. That was a long multi-year process and multiple other roads. Okay. We did, for the county administrator, we did that quick signal warrant that y'all needed done at Mossy Head on 285. I think we did that in about 30, 45 days. We didn't recommend you pay us to do the design. We recommend you go to the DOT and let them do the design and save the taxpayers' dollars on that. So that was one thing that we did in a very quick time frame. We can go on other projects.
Okay. And just for the audience's information, this is a scope project or scrap project funded by the state of Florida?
Scrap.
Funded by the state of Florida?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
For small counties.
Program for small counties outside of typical TPOs.
That's
outside the transportation plan.
And it's governed by a certain threshold of population. You're under that threshold, so you're eligible for the small county outreach.
Okay. Thank you. That's all
Any
I
other
have.
questions?
I just have one. Did you say your office is here?
Yes, we have an office
located?
in Freeport, construction engineering inspection office in Freeport.
Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
331.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so
very
much. All right.
Genesis Group.
Genesis?
Hello, Genesis.
Let me turn page and bottom. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
You have 5 minutes, and then after that, we'll have a period to ask questions. So
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
All right. My name is Nick Grosso. I'm a project manager with Genesis with over 10 years experience all in transportation design, all in the Panhandle. Very excited to be here to talk about County Road 183 North, Kidd Road. So some recent projects we've done for Walton County. We did a segment of County Road 183 to the south of this, very similar in nature to include widening, resurfacing, and safety improvements to the roadway from State Road 81 to just south of the interstate. So it's very similar design elements. However, this project does have substantially more right-of-way, which is definitely a good thing for us. So we have a great understanding of what the county is looking for on this project because that project just wrapped up. Construction was finished in 2015. And currently we're working on the paving of Walton Bridge Road. It's a dirt road from Rock Hill Road extending north to County Road 280. We just had a 90% meeting with Greg and the Public Works staff to talk about the design issues that we have on the project as well as the construction estimate. We anticipate plans being completed at the end of next month with permits, and hopefully construction can begin in April 2016. So I just want to stress that we're very familiar working with Greg, working with their staff, very familiar working with the local utility companies that will be involved on this project as well. And our team is the same team that we've used on the last two projects we've done for Walton County, so very familiar with the team. This is great timing for us. As I mentioned, we're wrapping up Walton Bridge Road in the next month and a half, so we do anticipate being able to work immediately on this project. And to focus more on this project, we recommend improving the roadway and the safety elements. Those are the two big items that I'm going to touch on in this brief presentation. We recommend widening to 11-foot travel lanes, utilizing an 8-foot shoulder with 5 foot of that being paved. And what that does is bring this roadway up to the current design standards. However, we do know it's a scrap-funded project, so there is a construction budget. So the first item that we're going to do is meet with Greg, meet with their staff to determine what the total improvements they want on the project are. And we're going to develop a conceptual plan and a conceptual cost estimate so that we could determine which items that can be implemented on the project that fall within that construction budget. And if we have to, we'll peel back some of that, but we don't want to jeopardize the safety. So that's the main focus we want to focus on. Improving the safety on the job, we recommend upgrading all the guardrail to meet the current standards, as well as we're going to identify additional locations where guardrail does not exist on the project. And similar to what we did on the southern segment of County Road 183, we recommend utilizing miscellaneous asphalt at all guardrail installations. That reduces the maintenance efforts for Pete and the Public Works staff at those locations. We also recommend the addition of signage and substandard curves, and we'll also complete a no passing zone study to determine if the passing zones on the project are safe. Next is the drainage. We're going to upgrade cross drains, extend cross drains to outside the clear zone, as well as upgrade the side drains, include mitered end construction, and modify the ditches and the concrete ditch pavement along the project. Similar to County Road 183, if we do not widen the project, then we recommend scraping of the shoulders at a 6% slope. Right now there's about a 3-inch buildup along the roadway, so it does not allow the roadway runoff to get into the ditches properly. And this was very evident at the wing wall failure near the Nance property, which is in our proposal also. So first thing, we need to discuss that failure with Greg, determine what has been tried in the past to develop an appropriate design and maintenance solution for that location. The maintenance of traffic, very big issue on any transportation project. The safety of the motorists, safety of the construction workers, that's the main concern. But we're also concerned with minimizing the delays to traffic, because that's ultimately going to minimize the amount of phone calls you guys get from complaining citizens. So we recommend reducing the construction length to 1 mile long increments, and that will hopefully delay or decrease the delay for the traffic in the work zone. Some innovative ideas we used on the other project of County Road 183 are using the asphalt millings for the Postal Service pullouts It was very successful on that project. We recommend utilizing that also on this project. And then meeting with Pete, meeting with the maintenance staff to determine if any ongoing maintenance issues can be addressed prior to the project going to construction to possibly reduce the construction cost on the project. And with that, I got 6 seconds, so very eager and excited to continue working and establishing our relationship with the county.
Okay, I'll ask the first question, and then where's your nearest office located?
Our design office is based out of Tallahassee, and we also have a CEI presence in Crestview with Doug Pritchard.
All righty, thank you. Ms. Meadows?
Yes, another thing too is, you know, you have a lot of projects going on and such. I guess your workload of your firm, how many projects in Walton County are you currently working on?
Currently working on, from a design standpoint, we only have the Walton Bridge Road project, which we recently submitted 90% plans.
Okay.
And we anticipate wrapping that project up by the end of next month.
Okay.
And I believe Doug is providing some CEI services on County Road 180C for the county.
181C.
Okay.
181C, sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chapman?
Nick, what is your plan for the roadway? Is it just overlay, or is it milling and overlay?
It will include milling and resurfacing likely. However, when we did our on-site field review in preparation for the proposal, the majority of the roadway, we didn't notice severe rutting or pavement failure. It was just really normal wear and tear. There were a couple locations of raveling and some patchwork around the bridges. However, we did not anticipate a huge pavement reconstruction project, but we will have to analyze the geotechnical data, so I know how much asphalt is out there and how much I can mill and how much I can put back. The worst section of pavement was east of the County Road 183B intersection that goes to the Holmes County line. It's only about an 850-foot section of pavement, but there was severe patchwork there. I don't know if there's base failure there. We'll have to look at geotechnical data to determine what level of reconstruction would be needed for that section.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Preble Rish will be the next presenter.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You will have
Thank you.
5 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer period whenever you're ready.
Good morning.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Does he need to state his name for the record, Dory?
Yes, ma'am, I will. My name is Cliff Nauer. I'm Vice President of Preble Rish Engineers. I got Cliff Wilson today with me. He's the President of Preble Rish Engineers. Presented you with some, if I was a doctor, I would say this is a perfect patient. Presented you guys with some pictures showing some of the problems that we have on the road. We have guardrails that don't meet current standards that we want to upgrade. We have some wing walls that have fallen in. There's some places where the asphalt is failing that needs to be fixed. End anchors that don't meet current standards. There's 108 driveways on the project. All of the culverts need to be fixed on the 108 driveways. We also have cored the roadway to check the asphalt thickness to get an idea of what needs to be done on this project. And based on the cores and the base material that we found on the project, we believe that we can mill 1 inch off the road and apply a leveling course, widen it to 22 feet. Right now the road is about 19 to 19 and a half feet wide, depending on where you're at. But the amount of money that DOT has funded for the project is more than adequate to get this road done right. And so we're pretty excited that the budget matches the needs of the roadway. As you can see, our cores are about 2 1/4 inches thick. So there's plenty of asphalt on the roadway right now to be able to mill 1 inch, come back and resurface it, and put a new cap on it. Our approach to the project is going to be to widen and resurface it with a very short time frame. We know that DOT has some constraints on when you have to be completed with the project. We believe that we could be done with the project by the end of 2016. One of our strategies to do that is going to be to eliminate any wetland permitting with the widening and resurfacing portion of the project and only do permitting for a wing wall that's failed as a separate portion of the project. We would set the bid schedule up as a menu. The menu would include items such as the driveway culverts and the wing wall, so that when DOT reviews the project, we can add those in at a later day if the budget allows. And so DOT has changed the way they're doing things. We're very familiar with how DOT is operating. We're very familiar with Walton County. We've been here since 1996. I've been working here since 1998, so I have 17 years experience, 18 years experience. We've done piles of projects in this area: County Road 2, Williams Road, Brown Road, Van Ingle Road, Sandy Ramp, Punch Bowl, Walton Road, McKinnon Bridge, and lots of FEMA projects. We've done tons of projects here. Our past record of performance, we just completed County Road 3280. That project was completed on time and under budget. We think that's a very similar project for the first 2 miles that we're just widening and resurfacing. This is a very easy project compared to 3280. Very easy. And you have plenty of money to get it done right. So we're excited about that. We also did County Road 395, 283, and 393. I'm going to let Cliff talk about a couple things.
Good morning, Council. Cliff Wilson. Appreciate your time this morning. First off, just wanted to open with Preble Rish has had local office in Walton County since 1996. To date, we currently employ 13 staff within our local offices here in Walton County, 4 of which are PEs, totaling over 50 years of experience in roadway-type projects. In regards to time and budget on this project, we are looking to dedicate 2 to 3 survey crews immediately upon notice to proceed. We believe we can get the survey complete in-house within 2 to 3 weeks, possibly 4 depending on weather, and then probably moving forward to complete design and 30 days after that to get ready to advertise to meet expectations on this project. One of my 2016 goals is to make sure, being involved in these type of projects as president of this company with 110 resources throughout the Panhandle, I've got the ability to pull additional resources when needed. And actually, one of my 2016 priorities is to be Mr. Nauer's handler and make him a top priority for myself as well. So look forward to working with you on this project, and I'll turn it back over to Cliff to close us out.
With regard to our current workload, we really need some work. Our design staff is low on work right now, so the timing for this project could not be better. We just finished several large projects that have wrapped up, and so we really need this project. And of course, our office locations on 393 in South Walton and on Highway 20 in Freeport. And we encourage you to check with any of our references. We work with about 60 cities and counties. You're welcome to call any of them anytime. Thank you very much.
Are you going to have like a manager, or do you, on all your projects, do you have like a manager who will, make sure everything's,
Yes, ma'am, we do. We assign a project manager to every project that we get. So I would likely, on this one, I would be the project manager of this project myself. Okay. And so I have 3 other PEs in my office that would work directly for me on this project.
Okay. Ms. Meadows?
Yeah, how your project load, that I'm interested in that as well. How many of these SCOP and SCOPE projects have you gotten from Walton County? Can you,
recently,
like in the past 3 or 4 years?
Well, the most recent that we got was County Road 3280, okay, which I believe was maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. Okay. You guys have had 2 rounds of scrap and SCOP projects since then, and we haven't got any of those.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, just a reminder, this is for design only. This is not CEI, just so you
understand.
Quick question. It's curiosity on these driveway culverts that you've got these pictures of. With, if you replace them, what's to prevent them from immediately having the same kind of collapse again?
Yeah, the driveway culverts weren't installed with mitered ends, which is the concrete angled piece at the ends of them. There's really only 2 sets of mitered ends on the whole 7-mile stretch. When the driveway culverts are replaced, they'll be replaced with what's called an Index 272 mitered end section. That protects it from the motor graders when they come through from tearing up the top of the pipe. In the pictures you can see there, you can tell the motor grader basically just crushed the ends of the pipes. And so the mitered in sections really help prevent that. And so we would include that as an alternate bid item to replace all of the driveway culverts. And if the budget allows, you would be able to award that as an alternate bid item.
Okay. But without it being an alternate, though, it would just be put back in place the same way?
Without being an alternate, say again?
The question is, you're talking about the end pieces,
Yes, sir.
but that would only come into play, you would replace those with concrete only if it was an alternate?
The alternate bid item would be to replace all the driveway culverts. You have, there's probably just maybe 5 or 6 culverts on the roadway that are not damaged or rotten. And so call it 100 that need to be replaced. DOT is looking at this like a resurfacing project. And if we include that scope of work in the original design and submittal to DOT, then we'll be able to add that at a later date or include it in the base bid if our final estimate looks like it's going to work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chapman, any questions?
Cliff, this first picture you're showing us, there's a section, the picture on the left-hand side. Is that section that ends right at Holmes County?
Yes, sir. The black stuff is Holmes County and the lighter stuff is Walton.
And with all that alligatoring that's taking place there, you're still saying in that particular area it's just a 1-inch mill before you overlay?
Yes, sir. We cored that area as well. There's 2 inches of asphalt there now. And the base, surprisingly, is pretty good. This is an old DOT secondary road, and they used about an 8-inch thick sand clay base. The material that's under that road is very, very good.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, you need to,
Are we supposed to total ours up?
Yes, ma'am.
I did have to take off my shoes, but, you know.
You can have
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's way too much information.
Yeah. Let's see, all these people with their calculators, with their cell phones.
Do you do it in your head?
I did it in my head.
With your fingers?
Did it in my head.
Are their names on this? They need to sign. Yeah, just remind them to sign those sheets.
I wanted to make my daughter proud. You know, she can add, subtract, and multiply in her head, so at least I can add.
We become two.
Yeah, everybody, you need to, don't forget to sign and date the bottom of your paper there. And we pass them to the clerk, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I started, you know, we said Madam Clerk for so many years, I had to check myself there, Alec.
Well, that's good. Here you go. Here you go.
All right, do we want to give them time to, or we want to proceed onward?
Next item is
Okay.
to begin negotiating with them, but we can come back to it if you want to give them a minute.
Why don't we give him, because I don't want him to feel rushed, why don't we come back to that item?
Okay, just remind us to.
And,
Yeah, he needs to check Sarah's math.
yeah, please,
Better check mine, too.
naught from
Better
naught,
check
you
mine,
know?
too. Better check all of it. Sometimes the calculators don't even.
Okay, yeah, we will come back to that item. What's next?
Next item, Madam Chair and Commissioners, is request to approve to advertise a public hearing to transfer $49,510 from the US 98 proportionate fair share account to the US 98 395 intersection road improvement account. There were some unforeseen requirements in completing that project, and the $49,510 is what's needed to complete it.
Okay, do we want to do that at the next board meeting in February?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct? February the 9th? Okay.
Motion to approve for February the 9th,
Second.
public hearing.
We have a motion, second, any discussion? Anyone in the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Next item is in relation to the one we just approved, is the change order to C.W. Roberts for the $49,510 to complete the 98 395 intersection improvements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion among the board? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Next item is a change order to contract 015-023 for the Northwest Florida Commerce Park, also known as the Moss Head Industrial Park, for the Phase 3 utility improvements with IC Contractors, Inc., adding 65 days. There are no dollars associated with this change order. It's simply making up for rain days and delays for other instances. I think there were some design or permitting issues that we had to overcome as well. But again, there's no money involved with this change order, simply time, but they're well on pace to complete the project.
It's certainly rain out there.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion among the board? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
The Commissioners, you asked us earlier to bring back kind of a layout of the 10-acre parcel adjacent to Helen McCall Park and what the possibilities of that are. So what you have in your agenda is a potential layout of improvements that could be located on that parcel. You'll see there parking in basically 2.5 multi-purpose fields. Again, this parcel, our appraisal came in at $400,000. They're asking between 1.5 and 1.7 million. So just for your information, unless you have further direction to staff.
What were those numbers again?
The appraisal came in at $400,000. They were asking 1.7 million. Last discussion was we might get to 1.5, but it's going to be, over 3 times the appraised value.
Well, with the funds we're spending on the sports complex, I mean, we'd love to have this, but I think it's overpriced. We'd love to have it, but if they would come down substantially, I think it might, we might be able to swing it. But right now, although land is becoming more and more scarce, so I don't know. Maybe talk to them and just give them a number that this is what we can pay, and see if they'll come down.
Okay, we'll be glad to.
Let me just ask a question. They're asking 1.7 million. If we took $1 million and added on to the new sports complex, how Rick? I guess I'm asking Rick, who said, how could we add all this out there?
Well, we already have that planned out there. We're phasing that park though, so whatever monies we spend other places takes away from what we can build at the sports park.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Maybe
it's going in phases. So yeah, this would take away from that. But if we could find some more funds and get these folks to come down, that's my thinking. So maybe not give it up yet, but maybe talk to them one more time and just come up with a number that we think we could live with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think based on the net usable area. What is that little thing in the little building in the front of the land? Is that a usable building? Do y'all know?
I don't know, Scott. Scott Caraway can probably shed some light on that. I've not looked at it closely.
Yeah, is it a barn, Scott?
What is the green hashing?
That's wetlands.
Wetlands. Okay, so the only usable is the red.
Right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Caraway, Walton County Public Works. The little building in front is an old house that I think someone is using it now for like a moped or a scooter repair shop right now.
So that's not part of this property, or
It
is?
is part of the property.
So we could.
It's a decent building. I'm not sure what use the county would have for it at this time. It's
Store equipment?
maybe storage.
Yeah, we always need storage.
Yeah, we could probably alter it and use it for equipment storage for the park maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
We'll continue that conversation.
Okay.
And on another note, the property adjacent to We Care Park. We just received a response back from the owners yesterday. Again, substantially more than appraised value, so just want to give you an update that those discussions are continuing, and we'll keep you abreast of that as we move forward.
And remind me again, what was that appraised at?
125,000.
And they want 225.
225.
And that's for a considerable amount of acreage, was it?
Yes, ma'am. It's, 44. Yeah.
44.
So I mean, it's a large piece of property.
So what would the net acreage be? I know that there's a power easement running through it.
We'd have to
Just,
calculate.
yeah, let's look
You know, yeah.
about
Rick
what.
says about 40 acres.
Plus or
Okay.
minus.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, thanks.
Upgrade, next item is the update on regarding park and ride. You have some information in your packet that Mr. Powell had acquired from DOT regarding some park and ride information that they had worked into their plans for US 98 and 331. There's no funding associated with those plans, but DOT would be more than happy to work with us if we wish to fund them. We also looked at we were asked to look at the potential of adding parking and park and ride at the South Walton Annex, which you'll see on your screen there. You see the annex building with the existing parking. What you see in green there is 120 parking spaces that could be added immediately to the east of the existing parking, and then the larger area up on the south of the entrance road it could be constructed there as well. The cost of these spaces, whether we're looking at those on DOT right away or here, are in the $4,000 to $1,000 range per space. I think the one immediately adjacent to the existing parking, that shows 120 spaces. We could build less than that. The cost per space would be about the same. So, if we have any interest in moving any of those forward, we'll be glad to do some more work on it for you.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
What does the yellow hash mean?
Yes, stuff.
It's probably wetlands.
Either wetlands or stormwater.
Okay, well, I thought originally when this complex was built years ago, the intent was to go on the west side of the existing parking lot and use that space in there that's available for the purpose of expanding.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. If we go and put a parking lot in there, we kind of limited what we can do. You got 130 spaces on the north side of the entrance road that appears, I would think that'd be adequate for a park and ride. I'm just concerned about trying to take up the other side, of the west side of the existing. As we all know, we need more space already. The constitutionals are letting us know that, so we got to think about that.
Certainly.
I was going to say the same thing.
Right. Question, isn't that site currently gravelled?
Partially.
No, the site no, because I parked in there the other day. There's a driveway around it, and it's grown up, and it's got a lot of stuff in
It
it.
used to be gravel, but that was years ago, so.
If you recall, we had code enforcement in a portable building there and they had some drive and parking areas, but it hadn't been maintained for many
The
years
grass
now.
is
Madam
got
Chair.
weeds.
Question for
Yeah.
Chance. And you have been discussing with DOT concerning these park and ride?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was, I thought at one time at the intersection of 331 and Rock Hill Road, there was going to be a park and ride there. They used to use it obviously all the time. Is there still any consideration of DOT to put one there at some future time?
Well, the justification report that you had in your package, I'm pretty sure was based on the park and ride that's been happening at Rock Hill Road. But the facility that they were proposing was basically there at the United Fire Station, or the Woodlawn Fire Station now. But the funding's not there for it. They considered that in the original plans for 331, but there's no funding available for it. But they have, basically said that it's warranted to be there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, in a way, I think we're talking about two different things, but they could be the same thing. I mean, we need, if you go, what happened to my parking lot? If you go back to where the old code enforcement was, we need that parking right now for people coming to the annex. I mean, the meeting we had the other day proved that. So if we could, I mean, it's our property, it's, all we need to do is clean it up right now. Can we go ahead and get it cleaned up, mowed? We could put gravel down for now or go ahead and pave it, whichever.
Yeah,
But
it would be
it's
easy.
ours.
It would be easy to get it in a condition where you could park some cars there. There are some people's election signs thrown in the bushes, I noticed. So if you're running for office, you might go out there and check.
Well, that's where they used to collect them, remember? Because code
Exactly,
enforcement
yeah.
was there.
Exactly.
So they used to collect them there. But,
Yeah, I noticed
if
that
somebody
when I
wants to
drove
make the
through
motion for us to clean this up and
I
go
would.
forward.
I
We
would
can
make
just
the
take
motion
direction.
that we go ahead and clean it up and spend a little bit of money, but not, we don't need to asphalt it yet, I don't think.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion among the board? Does anyone out in the audience like to? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries. All right, very good. Now that we're still park and ride, how do we go forward with that?
I think, I would like to see, the numbers they gave us was for construction. There weren't any engineering, permitting, design numbers in there. If we could get those, all the numbers, and let us know if there's a site that's got some really over-the-top permitting problems.
Yeah.
That would be something too, but all those costs, and then look at the total, and then, look at it again and make some decisions on how we would fund it.
Okay, be glad to.
Can somebody remind me, I know we had talked about using, say, United or whatever before, and somebody brought up a reason why we couldn't. Can somebody refresh my memory?
I think it was.
I mean, at least for county
okay.
employees to park there?
Okay.
I think the question was the terms and conditions for which we lease the property from I think it's from the DEP, who has a lease from the DOT maybe. So it was a kind of a convoluted, is that other way around? Okay, so.
Can we just check in if we could use that for county employees? Not make it open, but just for county employees to meet there?
Okay.
At least we can start that discussion. All right.
You got
I believe Mr. Clerk says we have our numbers.
Madam Chair, the firm's results of the ranking are number 1, Pebble-Rish, number 2, Atkins, number 3, Genesis.
All right. Then we need to go back.
The request would be, Madam Chair, which is as an agenda item that we move forward awaiting those tabulations, to begin negotiations with the top-ranked firm, in this case Pebble-Rish, for County Road 183 North Kidd Road design services as a result of the award of RFQ 16004.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and we move forward. Thank you.
We were just asking that maybe the air be turned. Temperature
Look at the counselor.
was cold. It's over there freezing.
Fan y'all up with.
Yeah. I tell you what, this is a good time. Why don't we take like a 5-minute break if you don't mind, and we'll be right back. We'll try to find some earmuffs for everybody up here, and we'll be back. Yeah.
I'm stinking. I can't wear deodorant. Freezing.
I don't do cold weather good anyway.
No, we're on the transit updates.
Oh, okay.
It's a fast 5 minutes, wasn't it?
I got to sit still.
We'll take another break before legislation.
And then hate yourself.
You look pretty good, little one. I forgot to tell you that. Oh, Dee. How'd the wedding be? It's perfect. Wonderful. Hey, I get a preview. believe you, you know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your seats, please. So,
Can we call Billy Williams down?
is he the one doing the study?
He's sitting there doing the talking.
Oh, if everyone will take their seat, please, Mr. Williams. All right, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item is update on the transit study. David Hape from Atkins is here, and then Chance Powell is going to give us an update on the 38 traffic.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. I'm glad I wore a sweater. Thank you for the break, too. I'm here to report briefly on the results of our transit survey. Altogether, beginning in November, we did an outreach survey that Bio Stern, our marketing consultant, actually performed. We had 1,431 residents that responded. We had 690 visitors. So we had over 2,121 responses to our survey. We actually ended it on December 15th, but we still had people that were saying, where's the survey after it was ended? Can I take the survey? So I know that by artificially shutting it off, we kind of increased the awareness of the survey. So I think there's a need to, once again, make it live and see if we get additional responses. I want to really quickly tell you where we've been. We started with a kickoff meeting with a steering committee back in the early fall. I attended the Mobility 30A workshop with our team, and I see Jay Lyles in the audience here today who helped to coordinate that with a DEO grant. And it was very amazing results of that discussion that there's a lot of interest in unique vehicles and unique opportunities for transit in the community. And I think that's one of the things that we think is important. The transit is not necessarily going to be convenient, and I think some of our statistics will show that. That is tied to the fact that today you could walk down the yellow line on 30A and not be hit by a car this morning at 7 o'clock, but in the middle of the summer you couldn't walk across 30A and not be hit by a car. So the congestion means that the vehicles are going to travel at the same speed. So we need to be aware of that in our final recommendations. Let me just give you a few statistics. I know I need to be brief. It's pretty interesting that we started out with this scope looking at 30A only, but we were asked to also expand the scope to look at how would we utilize transit to improve conditions on 331. I'm a former resident, and I drove 331 and 30A routinely. And today driving here, I would imagine that 99% of the vehicles on the road were traveling south on 331. And so the congestion on 331 is because people live in the north and they travel to the south. So I think the transit option needs to be kind of addressing that peak. Now, the situation will change dramatically when the road is four-laned and the bridge is finished and open. So I reserve my opinion until that time. We asked residents, this is residents, 1,400 responding, where they often travel to most for their needs, other than work or business, and other than Seaside and Santa Rosa Beach, a big item. They said Pier Park and Silver Sands. So in our view, we've looked at 30A as kind of the limits of this study, but we've also expanded our thinking to the east to maybe connect to Baytown Trolley at the west end of the beach, and to the west to connect to Okaloosa Transit at Silver Sands. So one of the opportunities might be to actually make those connections regionally. And it was interesting to note that the major activities, we asked them to choose three, that they use a personal vehicle for were dining, shopping, and working. Those were in the 80s and 60s. But another question said, do others in your home have difficulties getting your transportation needs met? And 67% said no. But I still think that 3/4 of the people that answered yes is a group of folks that we need to think about. 3/4 of the people responding said their transportation needs are not met. We asked, do you believe transit is a viable option for you or your family? And it was a 50-50 split. I think it's dependent on how much it costs and how convenient it is in the long run. Would you be willing to utilize transit to meet your mobility needs if it were available? 65% said yes. Now, this is the residents. 65% said yes. Which of the following factors would contribute to your desire to use transit for your mobility needs? About 70% said parking issues. We know that. Roadway congestion. We know that. But also a third said environmental issues. So we know that improvements to 30A are something that people are concerned about. They don't want widening. They don't want, per se, major improvements to the road. So environmental issues were really high. In order to avoid traffic issues, this is traffic issues, have you avoided traveling to any shops or restaurants along 30A? 81% said yes. In order to avoid parking issues, have you avoided traveling to any shops or restaurants along 30A? The same 81% said yes. We asked, at what times during the week would you most likely use transit? And it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it was late into the evening, too. So the question actually went until late night, 10 p.m. So I think there's a need for the understanding that transit serves another need, and that's to have folks that have been out having fun and maybe having a drink to be on the road safely. I'll be quick about this. What are the three characteristics that are most important to you for non-work travel? And that is stop locations, transit stop locations. So there were 62% that was very important. 55% said frequent services, and 54% said convenient service hours. I'm going to leave the next question for last. How much would you be willing to pay? 49, the most. 50% said 50 cents to $2. So they're not unwilling to pay. The next most answer was a discounted monthly rate pass. So there is a willingness to pay for the service. If public transportation option was available, how long would you be willing to wait for its arrival? 39% said up to 10 minutes. That's not realistic, but that's what they said. 29% said up to 5 minutes. 23%, they're impatient folks. 23% said up to 15 minutes. But the traditional time for a transit route is about a 1 hour headway between the times that the vehicle will stop at your stop going in the direction you want to go. 0.8% said that was an option. So it was really not too attractive to have a system that would operate on that kind of headway. Now, addressing the last agenda item, would you consider using a park and ride model of mobility to park outside the congested areas of 30A and ride into the area on transportation vehicles? And it was a dead even 50-50 split. So there is some interest in that issue. I started by saying that the improvements to 331 may mean that there's less of an issue for folks in terms of convenience and getting to work on time when the road is improved. So I think it would be interesting to study that same question afterward to know if there's a real need or a real demand or a desire to use park and ride. Now, I know that DOT likes to see it because it's demand management on roadways, and the whole West Florida Regional Planning Council ride-on system helps with carpooling and van pooling and coordinated park and ride. So I think the program is a good one because it eliminates some of the trips on the road. I quickly want to tell you what the visitors survey said. We had 690 visitors that responded. I think it's a remarkable response. We're doing a similar study for Orange Beach, Alabama, looking at feasibility along their major corridor. And we got about the same kinds of responses, but this was by far and away more responses than we got for that study. Questions. Would you be willing to utilize transit? And 3/4 of the respondents, 76%, said yes. So I think that's leads me to believe that if they have visited here or they are visiting here, that they understand the conditions drive them to use transit. During which of the following seasons and times are you most often in the area? And for the most part, those folks, the primary answers were weekends, and it ranged from 49% in the fall and the spring down to 31% in the winter. So there were folks that said that they are full-time visitors. I'm a little confused how they managed to do that, but those numbers were lower, obviously, but they considered themselves visitors because they probably vote someplace else. Which communities are you currently staying in or most recently stayed in? And obviously it was Seagrove Beach, Santa Rosa Beach, and Seaside were the primary responses, so we know where we need a service area. What areas do you visit most on your recent stay, or did you? Seaside was 70%, 67.8%. However, I do want to mention that Silver Sands at 30% and Pier Park at 23% still lead us to think that there might be reasons to connect elsewhere for ridership. And certainly, I don't live in Walton County now, but I certainly visit here, and I certainly visit in the vicinity of Seaside often. What are the major activities you usually use a personal vehicle to participate in while in Walton County? Dining, shopping, and visiting the beach were the highest. Do you believe transit is a viable option for you or your family? 57.8% said yes. If you do not believe transit is viable, this is an important question to us. If you do not believe transit is viable for you or your family, what are some of the reasons? 77% said do not want to be reliant on the transit schedule. So you can see the schedule and that wait time and the convenience is very important to those respondents. And then it's not a surprise in a beach community, but we see this elsewhere too, large items to transport. So if you're talking about a park and ride and people are going to the beach and they don't want to go to the beach because there's no place to park, they still have the issue of carrying all of their beach things with them on transit. So it's clearly an issue for them. And then difficulties traveling with young children is another one. Question, in order to avoid traffic issues, have you avoided traveling to any shops or restaurants along 30A? 58% said yes. So that's a problem for us in our economy. In order to avoid parking issues, have you avoided traveling to any shops or restaurants along 30A? The same 58% roughly said yes. So parking and the traffic are the issues that visitors recognize cause them not to participate in your business economy on the beach. And I'll have to say, I'm going to quickly end by saying, related to the park and ride, we asked, would you consider using a park and ride model of mobility to park outside the congested areas of 30A and ride into the area on transportation vehicles? And nearly 53% said no. So that goes back to the issue of the convenience of riding a vehicle with a lot of beach things and with children. And would you consider using public transportation to go further north into Walton County while visiting the 30A corridor, such as visiting Defuniak Springs? We asked that question in particular because when we talked to the steering group, we thought that there might be a reason to run a transit system as far north as here, Defuniak Springs, and because in the morning it would be full going south, but every transit trip coming back might be empty. So the idea of making Defuniak Springs an important destination was something we wanted to investigate, whether visitors would like to go here and spend a day here. And so the trip back by that vehicle would not be as empty. But 78% said they are not likely to be interested in that. I know coming up there's a talk about Amtrak coming back, and I think that might actually be something of interest to visitors because they may actually want to use unique mobility methods, a train, and transit, and whatever trolley or system we have on the beach. So I'll leave it at that. I think the most important findings so far are that people are impatient. They don't want to wait too long, that they recognize that parking and congestion on 30A have been inconvenient and probably impossible at times. And so our recommendations will be to look at those two issues in conjunction with what the study will finally recommend. And I was asked by Commissioner Meadows when we could expect to bring you some answers, and I think the answers will be forthcoming. We want to have a meeting mid next month with our steering committee, one last meeting with them to discuss all the findings and make sure that our thoughts are moving in the right direction. And then we want to come back to you at the first meeting in March with a draft report. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
I have one question. You mentioned Amtrak, and I have been trying and worked with the city and a number of other people ever since it stopped to get it started again. And of course, before it stopped because of Katrina, it stopped in Crestview and then I think in Shipley. We were always told that Defuniak couldn't have a stop for various reasons. I think the station wasn't adequate and all that sort of thing. Is there any hope for us at all of getting a stop here in Defuniak Springs?
You know, that's the subject that everyone wants to have answered. I think Chipley and Pensacola and others are talking about it just as vigorously as you are. I know you sit in the TPO meetings and hear the discussions about it. So I would say you have the facility. I think you have the sidetrack. I don't know if you have the ability to get everybody off the track long enough. I did hear that in the next month that there is a VIP train that's going to be running, I think, between Atmore, Alabama, and Pensacola, just so that visitors, VIPs, can see what the service looked like and get a sense of it. The irony is that I think part of that trip is going to have to be by bus. Because they don't have an adequate siding in the location where it has to be demonstrated in order for the train to get off the track. They have to move further down the way to get off on a siding. So,
well, I was told at one point Crestview was considering not wanting it back, and I guess they've changed their mind since then. Because that was our hope that maybe if Crestview didn't want it, then it could be given to us.
I have not heard that, but we can always hope that multimodal transportation is a goal for the future, and that Amtrak, if it's viable, is going to come back. Subject for another day, though, is the park and ride, and I think you probably made a decision today to investigate that further.
We did.
Commissioner?
One question. The outlet malls, the Pier Park, I think that's, there is a question, though, that, everybody asks each other during the summertime, those of us who live out in Santa Rosa Beach, is do you avoid going down 98 into Sandestin or Destin during the summertime? And the answer is always yes. Everybody avoids it. So could you look at, that segment of the study? I didn't really see anything in here that said, do you avoid going down to Miramar Beach, Sandestin during the summertime because of the traffic? And I think the answer would probably be a resounding yes.
Yes, we struggled with what the scope of this study was, and we ended up calling it a scoping study so that we could ask the right questions and find, further investigations that are needed to make sure that it's viable, that it's feasible. So we thought that it was important to extend to the east and the west to connect to other transit systems. Now, whether that would have enough ridership is the question, but one of the other things that we're looking at is route systems and alternatives that actually avoid 30A to the extent possible, but use 98. Right. And so using 98 and then using the connecting roads that come down to 30A for whether it's park and ride or park and walk or park and ride your bike is another option that we're looking at. So, and I know during the Mobility 30A study workshop, there were lots of future-looking visionary ideas about connecting roads and paths that would provide service that you would call valet service for resorts, where individuals would come down and park and then have a valet to their unit or their place where they're staying. So that extended so far as to say that electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles might be an option for those types of uses.
Also, too, what impact do you think Uber is going to have on this area? Because I do believe that it will show up here pretty soon. So what impact do you think that will have on the transportation here? Hard to say.
Don't know. But I saw in the news today that there's a riot someplace by the taxi drivers that are opposed to it. I'm not sure I remember where it was, but I was in Pensacola in a meeting to talk about similar things, and one of the persons needed a ride to go get her vehicle from the shop, and she called the Uber, and they arrived, and she was successful.
One thing, convenience, and timeliness, and those cars are already on the roads, pretty much driving around, and it's all done by, handheld computer. So I think that's going to have a big impact. So I'd kind of like you to incorporate some kind of comments about that. But I did find it interesting that people do not want to, most of them do not want to ride on a rickshaw. And they don't like double-decker buses. They'll ride on single-decker bus, but they don't particularly like double-decker. I don't know what that's about. And also, what was the other one? Oh, yeah, the carpool. People just don't want to ride in the car with anybody else, I guess, because look at those numbers. No, I'm not going to get in ride in the carpool. So I just thought those were very interesting trends that, anyway.
Well, I tried to hit the high points and the most optimistic ones.
I hate to be the one to say it, Cindy, but, Americans are spoiled. We're spoiled with our automobiles and the fact that we can get in our car anytime we want to, when other countries, England and France and all other, they don't, they use public transportation and they carpool. They're not, so.
Well, when you spend as much money as people do now on cars, you almost kind of have to live in it to make it worth its while. And so I think people really love their car.
But at least you don't have to pay for gas right now.
The next agenda item actually relates to this study in a large way, because the traffic study update will be interesting to see in terms of congestion and some of the alternatives for how connecting roads might be made possible. I would like to ask a question of the audience. How many of the people in the audience arrived in one person in a vehicle? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chance.
Interesting.
Thank you, Ward. Chance Powell with Public Works. I just want to give you a little update on the traffic update, which is basically an update of the 2006 study done on 30A 10 years ago. We've been working rigorously with the consultant on that one to define the scope and the tasks to make sure that we collect all the data that we need to mirror what was done back in 2006, and to allow us to compare what they forecasted then to make sure that's where we thought we would be today, and that the recommendations that they had in that report are still valid, and maybe that other things are not also come up that would be in addition to what they recommended then. But we've got the scope, and that task order has been finalized and agreed upon by both of us, the consultant and the Public Works, and we should have should have a proposal today so we can get that process moving.
What is the timeline for
schedule of that?
Yeah.
In order to match what was done back in 2006, we wanted to mirror the same data collection times based on the season. And we'll be collecting traffic data along all the intersections of 30A, from the west end all the way at 98 back to the east end at 98. And they will be done in May and June. That was exactly what was done back in 2006.
Okay, so we're going to have some really good information to look at during the fall and winter, and plan on what we're going to do during those time periods.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you.
I think the interesting part of that is we're going to really see what's happened from 10 years ago to today.
Right.
And the comparison will be real, and then we can look at whatever action is appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you, Chance.
All right,
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item that we have from the TDC is a request to approve and authorize the chair to sign a contract with Strategic Advisory Group for the additional scope of services for the STRAP plan for an amount not to exceed $35,000.
To approve. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion among the board at this time? Any questions? Anyone in the audience like to comment on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Second item, thank you, and the second item is a request for approval and authorize the chair to sign an MOU and a letter of support for Riverway South Apalachicola Choctawhatchee. This is for a ecotourism campaign in the amount of $750.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, anyone in the audience like to comment on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The third item that we have is a request to approve and authorize the chair to sign and extend the deliverables on the to the RAM Professional Group contract at no additional cost to the county. This is an agreement that we're currently in with RAM for conducting the public space design charrette. With the transition of the executive director, we were a little bit slow in getting this process started. The notice to proceed was actually signed in September, but we didn't actually take any action until November. So we're just asking for a 90-day extension of time only.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
And as far as the updates, I have an update for you on the Executive Director Selection Committee and the process. The committee convened on January 14th and conducted the initial scrub of the applications that have been submitted. Out of that committee meeting, the committee selected 6 for an interview. Those names are Julie Morgan, David West, Mary Chris Murray, Jay Tusa, David Nolan, and Robert Petway. HR has worked to do some preliminary work in preparation for an interview and has scheduled those interviews. However, since those interviews were scheduled, February the 3rd is that date. We've had 2 that have called back and declined the interview. Those 2 were David Nolan and Robert Petway. So on February 3rd, we'll be interviewing those first 4 candidates.
Is there another one in line that you could, behind the, since 2 dropped out, and there's only 3 left, are there 2 others that you could put back in there, or?
If you would like us to consider that at the February 3rd meeting, we could.
I think so. I mean, I think that, since those 2, because I'm sure that there were probably some others that were, that were in the hunt, but maybe not the top. Okay. So I would like to see that, just to see who else we can talk to, because I think the more the better.
I can certainly take that back to the committee, and when you establish the process as well, you also reserve the right to insert somebody into the process if you wish, specifically for them to be interviewed as well.
Well, I think weren't we going to do that after y'all interviewed this group? But I think now that 2 have dropped out, if anybody has a specific name that is not on the list, I think maybe it'd be a good time to give it to you.
Can forward that. Yes,
I was thinking just the next 2 in line.
Okay. I didn't know if anybody had.
I looked through them. The ones. I think the next 2 in line, were there 2 more? Was there a scoring system?
There, now that I think about it, there was not. We took the applicants that met the minimum qualifications, and we took them one by one and took a vote as to whether or not to interview them or not. So it was a yes or no on
okay,
either
so
one.
there wasn't really a ranking or criteria or anything. It was just a vote. Okay.
Well, maybe go back and just, maybe at that meeting and review and see if there were 2 more that
could be,
that could
At
be
the minimum
put,
qualifications
yeah.
that we might be interested in.
And Stan, I know when we discussed this, Kendra Parson was her qualifications were debatable, I guess. So I would kind of like Kendra Parson from Tallahassee to be looked at too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Subject to your questions, that's all we have.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next, we have a public hearing.
Can I ask Stan something too? The TDC Advisory Council voted to send a letter to Tallahassee, ask the AG, I think, or somebody in Tallahassee, asking them to look at the Maximus study. I think the maybe the criteria behind it or something about the Maximus study. And I think for sake of transparency, that letter never went. It was not signed by evidently the chairman of the TDC wouldn't sign it, and it's just kind of fallen in a big black hole. So is there a way that we could go ahead and send that letter on to Tallahassee and ask them for sake of transparency as to what their opinion is on that, on those issues?
Believe counsel has left. He said he had a 10:30 appointment. It's my understanding that we have it on the TDC agenda for next Tuesday to address.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if that's sufficient.
Okay, yeah. I just would like to see that at least not just fall off in a big black hole, because I think it is important for transparency purposes. We send everything else that we do to the AG for clarification, and I think I'd like clarification on that.
I believe we do have it on next Tuesday's
Okay,
agenda.
great, thank you.
And, all right, I have a couple of questions about it too, but I'll ask you, after
Okay.
me. All right. Any other questions from TDC? All right, next we have a public hearing. So I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good morning, Ms.
Morning.
Willis.
Melissa Thomason, OMB. This is just a request to approve a resolution amending the fiscal year 16 budget to bring forward land sale funding for the Mossy Head Industrial Park and wastewater treatment plant, the remaining cost for fiscal year 2016, and the total amount on that is $254,155.
Any discussion among the board? Is there anyone out in the audience that would like to comment on this issue? Seeing none, this is a money issue, so we'll have to vote in the
Motion
public
to
hearing.
approve.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? Motion and second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
I have a question on the wastewater treatment plant, and maybe this is for another time. Since we're gonna become a utility company, basically, are we gonna hire any more people to help with that? Because all my guys in public works are getting kind of stretched to the
We're
gills.
going to let them take turns. No, actually, we have an operator that's on contract.
Okay.
And we are billing those customers that are now using the facility.
Okay.
As we move forward, we will have a better handle of what the needs are
Okay.
and what resources we'll need. But right now, their contract provider has it under control.
Great, thank you.
And we have one more.
Did we
Do we have to close this one?
We didn't on
Yes, we
that.
need motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We need another one?
Now we need to open it again.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And this is a second request for approval of a resolution. This is amending the fiscal year 16 budget for Highway 30A prop fair share revenues. This is for a change order for the Draper Lake Bridge Improvement Project. The amount on this one was $14,965.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? None? Anyone in the audience like to comment? Seeing none?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and 2 seconds. All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Davis.
Commissioners, the first item I have is a request for you to approve the contract to purchase a parcel of property located in Inlet Beach from William J. Walter and authorize the chair to sign the contract and any and all closing documents necessary to close the contract and purchase the property. You have attached to your packet the documents that would need to be signed at closing, except for maybe a tax proration agreement, which I haven't received yet. But otherwise, we would ask you to approve the chair signing those documents so we can close the purchase of this property.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, that is to also include the tax.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Commissioners, the next item is an addition, and I appreciate you allowing me to add it. As you probably are aware, the county, through our office, sent a demand letter to Carr, Riggs, and Ingram regarding some what we believe to be audit deficiencies that took place some time ago and more recently. We sent that letter back in November of 2015. Upon receipt of the letter, I received a phone call from their general counsel in Montgomery, who indicated that they would be hiring local counsel to discuss this matter with me or with the county. They hired an attorney out of Pensacola. We have met with that gentleman 3 times, I believe. In the initial meeting, there was some questions raised about whether or not, and by the way, those meetings took place, I believe, after the first of the year, raised some questions about whether or not they could continue their current audit of the county based on that letter invoking some independence issues under their ethical rules. We proposed a variety of solutions to them to allow them to continue to finish this audit. Just by way of information, the current audit is probably a couple of weeks from being basically done. We have expended approximately $155,000 on the firm on this year's audit, so they are at the end of the audit. After a couple of 2 or 3 discussions with that attorney and our office, we received a letter, I believe it was on January 22nd, essentially saying because of those independence issues, they were going to withdraw from the current audit. I then prepared this agenda item to submit to you. If they withdraw from the audit, obviously we have to have the audit completed before June 1st. To hire a new firm under Florida statutes, we have to establish a audit committee which consists of constitutional officers or their designee and one of you or your designee. That audit committee, subject to the Sunshine Law, has to come up with the essential requirements in RFP, review the RFP responses, and then make a recommendation to the board for an audit firm. I submitted that to you on Friday afternoon. Late yesterday afternoon, I received a phone call from their local counsel essentially saying that if we would agree to what amounts to a temporary withdrawal of the demand letter and submit our claims to a mediator within the next couple of 2 or 3 weeks, they could, under their ethical rules, finish the audit, the current audit. Now, essentially we're creating a legal fiction because we're withdrawing the letter, but we're mediating the terms of the letter or the terms of the claim. So, but that seems to satisfy their ethical concerns about being able to complete the audit. My suggestion to you, frankly, at this late date is to go ahead and form the audit committee. Let's get that process started. We need to do it anyway, as I understand it from the clerk. This summer, we'll have to put this issue up to a bid anyway. So let's go ahead and get that process started. I can do whatever's necessary to temporarily withdraw the letter and then submit the issues to a mediator in the meantime, and then they can complete the audit and we can go forward with the RFP in the summertime. That would be my recommendation to you at this point. It is a legal fiction because we would be mediating the terms and the demands in the letter, but that seems to satisfy whatever they need with their internal folks, their internal compliance folks, to be able to finish the last few weeks of this audit.
Mr. Enfeld's a CPA and my daughter's a CPA, and I certainly understand their ethical, rules. I don't know why we didn't try mediation to begin with. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Mediation would have been a good choice because, I hate to get into a lawsuit situation. I've given it some careful thought, and they are, 98 or 90% through with this audit. I think that is the appropriate thing for us to do, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Davis, my question is, if you withdraw your demand letter, then what is your basis for mediation?
Well, it's and I'll use this term, and I've used it before. Don't love this term, but we're essentially creating what we call a legal fiction. We're withdrawing the letter, but we will submit the exact same issues to the mediator to attempt to be resolved.
Do we lose any?
It would be a voluntary mediation.
Do we lose any status in our claim by doing that?
I don't believe so. Fortunately, the claim was made early enough in the time periods in terms of statutes of limitations as to the claim would not be affected, I don't believe. And by the way, I would put all sorts of reservation of rights in the withdrawal. I mean, I wouldn't just say we withdraw it forever and ever.
So do you have proof that they're 90% done with the?
I would defer that to Mr. Alford.
What percentage would you say they have completed?
They are at least 90% done with that. They have most of the constitutional officers done, and they have the BCC right now, and that'll be their big push to knock that out. But I do have one report that has to be done by Sunday night, so any way y'all could expedite this, I would really appreciate it.
Which one is that?
It is county-funded court. It's sent to the DFS. Has to be signed by your auditor.
Well, while I don't like the word legal fiction.
I don't either.
Yeah, it kind of gives me a queasy feeling. And I don't like the idea of the whole thing, but it sounds like it's probably in the best interest of saving money, saving time, and moving forward. So with those reservations, I would support it.
Is that we need a motion?
Can I get a clarification before we do that, Madam? Yeah. By using the term mediation as opposed to arbitration, this means that if we're not satisfied that we can come to an agreement, we still can go forward with all of our legal options available to us.
That's correct. Arbitration would be binding. Mediation is voluntary, and you only agree. There's no order handed down.
And they're not willing to arbitrate.
Apparently that would not satisfy, from what I understand from their counsel, that would not satisfy their compliance issues. Don't know why.
I share Commissioner Meadows' concerns. But I'm relying then on your assurance that we're not going to lose any of our potential options should they be needed.
No, none that exist today that would change. That's correct.
I would support this just because we need a smooth transition and we need to meet the mandates of our constitutional officers and go forth with, what we have to do.
Was that a second?
That was the second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any further discussion among the board?
And just by way of clarification, this motion includes going ahead and forming the audit committee so we can get that process started.
Who did the motion?
To have that available to us.
Okay, that is part of the motion. Is there anyone out in the audit?
Who made the motion?
You did.
I didn't make the motion.
Oh, I thought you made the motion. Oh, okay.
No, I said with reservations, I would support this. Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Or any discussion further among the board?
And last, just as a matter of getting this thing moving, could you go ahead in your motion and either designate one of you or a designee to serve on the audit committee?
I'd like to designate Mr. Commissioner Bill Impel to serve on the committee as part of my motion.
Thank you. But is there a time limit? I don't want to see this thing just drag on. Let's get the resolution if we can. If not, we need to go forward.
Yes, we suggested, the attorney and I suggested 3 weeks. We would have the mediation done in 3 weeks.
Do you have the time, sir?
I'll make the time.
All right, thank you. All right. So is that part of your motion?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. All right, is anyone in the audience like to comment on this motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, Ms. Meadows.
Rock and roll. I've already kind of addressed mine, the Maximus study I wanted to mention and the wastewater treatment plant operation. So I don't have anything else at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Impel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Part of my request is going to be directed to Commissioner Chapman, who in the past has been gracious enough to share some of his rec plat fees with other districts that didn't have enough to go forward. In District 3, the New Harmony Community Center suffered a calamitous plumbing problem back in the fall and water damage to a considerable part of their facility. They need between $10,000 and $12,000 to effect repairs, and I know that they're willing to put their own sweat equity into helping to keep the costs down. My request would be to ask Commissioner Chapman, would he be willing to allow $10,000 of his rec plat fees to be utilized to help remedy the problems in the New Harmony Community Center?
Before you answer that, I would say that District 5 plat fees would be willing to split that with District 1.
Well, I was going to try and put you on the spot.
Hey, I knew that's what you were going to do. So no, we would be happy to contribute $5,000 for that.
Well, I'm sure the commissioner appreciates that. I know I do. Your fund seems to be growing every day, and mine grows a little bit, but I'm 2, 3, and 4 don't have a lot of money coming in there.
We almost have none.
I know. So, Commissioner Linfield, I'd be glad to give $5,000 out of my rec plat fees to that cause.
My motion would be then to utilize $5,000 from District 5, thank you, and $5,000 from District 1, thank you, towards allowing the New Harmony Recreation Center to get rehabilitated.
And that's your motion?
That's my motion.
My second.
And we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience? All right, all those in favor? Aye. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to be so willing to because we are one county, to help us all out. I appreciate it.
I agree. My second item is I'm aware that Judge Wells is interested in looking at some possible renovations to the courthouse. I'm not sure of the exact extent. I'd like to ask the county administrator to get with him and look to see what renovations, what changes would be desirable, funding sources and things of that nature, and bring that back to the board. And so I'd like to make that a direction to admin to follow up on that.
Madam Chair, there's one thing in follow-up to that. I would assume this is the old courtroom, on the 3rd floor. Did we ever get that water issue taken care of inside that courtroom, especially on that north wall?
The answer today is no. We're actually in the process of having a contractor give us a price in the next 2 weeks to put a membrane-type sealer on the entire exterior of the building. I mean, not like we're going to wrap it in something, but it's a spray.
Do we know if that drain that's there is contributing
We
to
feel relatively certain it is. Part of that effort will be to replace and some of the downspouts from the gutter system.
Mr. Alford, do you know if that water that's coming in up there at the top of that, at the ceiling in that courtroom, is it getting all the way down to the basement, or do you have any idea yet?
Water runs downhill, Commissioner.
I figured it did. Okay, so it's that whole area, that whole 3rd floor, 3 floors, rather.
It has.
Yes, okay.
Are they thinking about putting it back to the way it originally was back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I used to work up there?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it would be, I'd love to see it go back to the way it originally was.
And that's the whole idea, and appreciate Commissioner bringing it up. I know Judge Wells and I have had the conversation on more than one occasion, but I think it's a perfect opportunity to let's do some assessments and move forward with a scope of services, and if the board will allow us, actually draft a RFP in that scope so we can at least get that on the street once we bring it back for your approval to figure out what all these things are going to cost. We know we don't have identified funding, but once we know what the costs are, then we'll have a better chance. But would it be acceptable to go ahead and draft that RFP based on the scope that we come up with, and we'll bring back that to you for your approval?
Is that the only part of the old building that is maybe being damaged? I mean, is the cupola and the spiral, is it still in good shape? I'd love for us to check it all if we're going to be checking.
Exactly. We'll get with
Please.
the judges and look at what their thoughts are, and we'll check all those things out, and then we'll develop that scope of services and bring it back.
That's a beautiful part of the old courthouse.
I have a question. Do we want to restore it to its old glory, or do we want to, they said here large courtroom and associated offices, so that to me would mean, fairly updated, new environment. So I just need some clarification on that. I mean, if we want to restore it, that's one thing, and I think if we want to redesign the inside so that it's a large courtroom and associated offices. That's another.
No, I think just to identify the area that's there, the old large courtroom and the offices around it. In my conversation with Judge Wells, and I'm assuming with the commissioners as well, was to take it back in time, basically. There's some old wood ceilings, I think, in there that are covered up. How do we get those back?
Okay.
Some of the wall coverings that may be covering some of the original brick and things, how do we restore that back too?
Okay.
It was like the county judge and his secretary on one side, the circuit judge and
So they're already there. Okay.
They're already there, yeah.
Well, it would be a good opportunity to do something historic. Maybe we could get some historic renovation funds.
And I think that's, if we can get to the idea where we know what we want to do and how much it's going to cost approximately to do it, then we'll have a lot easier road to find appropriate funding through whatever channels are available.
I think that's wonderful.
If you put something at the top, it would roll all the way down to the bottom
Pretty
of the
much,
thing.
yeah.
Pretty much. And people, when they walked down, they kind of had to run down the thing, and then they had to stop. So it was an interesting experience.
It
Right.
is. So,
Madam Chair, I've got one last item, and for just a moment. Mr. Jeff Goldberg, would you stand up, please? During this past week, I think for the first time that I've seen from my time with the county, I saw an after-action report from the storms that went through and gave a highlight to damage and conditions on the roads other than when we've had a state of emergency. And I just wanted to say thank you to Jeff for that and ask that he please continue that. But really appreciate knowing what happened in my district and other northern districts when we had last week's significant rain, significant wind issue. So thank you, Jeff.
yes. Councilor Malavis, thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Jeff, as a follow-up, I appreciate you putting in the river readings along Choctahatchee, Ebro. It helps there. At Caryville. It was already there, but that was very helpful. Thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, sir.
And I'll start with, while we're recognizing employees, I don't think Billy Bearden's here, but when J.C. Alford passed away, he was in the midst of building his own house. And so his wife could not get a certificate of occupancy. So Billy went out actually on his own time and helped this family. So they wanted me to recognize him today.
Amen.
And also we have Grit and Grace. This is one of my favorite organizations. And we have Kim Kirby, who's the incoming president, and Mark Douglas, who's the outgoing president, and spent Sunday afternoon with them. So if y'all would come forth, and Dan Owens, I believe you have some presentations to our libraries. And other board members, come on up, please. Mac and Von Seal. And if you've never had the opportunity of seeing one of these presentations, you really do. It's my 2 years off. I was on the board, and it was really fun. So, go ahead. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
I'm sorry, would you spell your last name for the record, please?
Kirby. Kim Kirby. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Clerk, and staff. Thank you so much for allowing us to come before you today. I am Kim Kirby. I'm the president of Grit and Grace, and I have with me today Dan Owens, who is director of the library, but he is also a new board member, Von Seal McLeod, Matt Carpenter, Ronnie McBrayer, Deputy Harold Shover, and Mark Douglas, who's our immediate past president. And for those of you who don't know about us, Grit and Grace is Walton County's official folk life production, and our mission and purpose is to preserve the history of Walton County through music, storytelling, and dance. And we do that as a volunteer working board using local talent. We write our original music, and we hire a playwright and a director to help put that production together. So it takes a lot of working hands. So any of you that would like to get involved, we'd appreciate having you. I know most of y'all have supported us in some way. Commissioner Meadows' story was told in our 2014 production, and Commissioner Jones has served on our board before, and most of you have either been a member or have contributed to our playbill, and we appreciate that very much. We are here today to present to the Walton County Public Library System a copy of our book based on our most recent production, our 26th production, Wild Wild Walton. And our playwright and the author of this book is here with us, and our new board member, Ronnie McBrayer, and he will also be the playwright for this year's production. So with that, I'd like to invite Ronnie to come up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Ronnie McBrayer, thank you for the chance to present this to the library system today. It has also been placed in the Walton County school system. And I would like to say that moving to Walton County 10 years ago with my family is the single best thing I have done in my adult life for my family. And so thank you for letting me give a little back to this community that means so much to us. Thank you so much.
We thank you.
Thank you. And I would love to get a group photo. And would anybody take one on my iPhone that I can post to our Facebook page? Any takers? Oh, thank you, thank you. Awesome. So with that, Dan, and they each have a label on the inside with the name of the library.
We'll let Dan do it.
All right. That way, if mine didn't turn out, I can get yours.
I send Dottie pictures all the time, so I'll have her send me hers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
I have nothing.
All right. I have two things. Number one, if you remember, I think I brought back to you at the last meeting here in December the thought of naming some things after some folks that passed away last year that had given most of their life to Walton County and Northwest Florida. One of them, we'll start with Darrell Peden, Senator Darrell Peden, who has worked so tirelessly in this area for medical help for our families and the dental school. He was instrumental in getting the dental school here. So it was I asked everybody to come back with suggestions. And it's my suggestion maybe that we name the dental wing at the health department after Dr. Peden. And I believe we have heard from the state health department, and because it's our building, they do not have a problem with it. So does anybody else have any other ideas?
Yeah, I thought of something. Most places that you go, they have a wall of maybe it's called the Wall of Fame or the Wall of History or something, and they have photos of people who have made substantial contributions to the county. And maybe they have a picture and a plaque underneath, and it states what they did and all that. I think that because we have a lot of people here who have contributed so much, and we don't have enough facilities to go around to name all of them, to name after them, that we establish somewhere in one of our buildings is a, whatever we want to call it, history wall, wall of fame, and that maybe each year we induct someone into that Hall of Fame and we put their plaque and such up there. That was what I was thinking about. Just because we have a lot of people that we need to recognize, and we only have a couple facilities that we can really name.
Okay. Any other suggestions, ideas, gentlemen? I said we're considering at this time Dr. Peden, N.C. Davis, who did Negosi and all that, and also our former employee J.C. Alford. It was suggested maybe that we do a boulevard going into the new sports park after MC, and then the Gaskin Park after JC. I mean MC and JC. But we're open to any suggestions at this time.
Madam Chair, as far as Mr. Davis, I know he was a good man and all that. I would like to maybe proffer that the new boulevard leading into the sports park plus. And also will join the new school at some point in time, and also he had plans for a development there. So I think that would probably be appropriate. And while we're talking about it, Commissioner Meadows, concerning honoring people that have contributed to this county, most of the time we do that, they're dead.
Exactly.
And that might be a reason. I want to say there might have been some old policy in place years ago that you could only do it. They had to be passed away before you could do that. And You know, if they get to that level where they should be honored, you think they'd like to be there before they got dirt thrown in their face. So might want to consider that at a future date as to whether or not we want to change the policy. But as far as the boulevard leading into the sports complex, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Dee Dee, didn't we have because I think we've drawn it up since I've been in office, that in order to, there is criteria, and I think one of them is that you be passed away, so we might want to revisit that. But I think, didn't we do it around 2007 or 8?
I don't remember.
I think,
yeah,
I'm sure we did. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of competition for folks that are living to be, everybody wants something named after them. So, that I think that was part of the reasoning behind it, was that once you're gone, people really like you, and then they like you more. You were.
I've always suggested the padded cell at the jail for me, but I mean,
Yeah, I like that.
A motion?
I think the MC Davis Boulevard. Now, do we have the right to name that boulevard? Is it ours? Is it the schools? Is it
The three-way.
the three-way thing? See,
But
the
I think
school.
it's going to be a county-maintained road.
It is going to be county-maintained
Yes.
road, and I don't think that either party would have
So
a
I
problem
think is either party going to have trouble in.
I'll mention it at the next school.
Because I think the MC Davis Boulevard is that'd be a great idea.
Well, we want to vote on these one at the time because we need to vote on them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we take Darrell Peden? And I also think we can also, Commissioner Meadows, do. I have for a long time wanted to see a wall of all past commissioners. I think it'd be interesting to go all the way back and get as many pictures as we can.
Yeah, many places have that.
Yeah,
Many
Dee Dee's
places
been
have-
trying to do that. That's hard.
Get one. We got two now.
But anyway, we'll take MC Davis, Dr. Darrell Peden, the dental wing at the health department.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor, is there any public comment on any of these at this time? Seeing none? All right. All those in favor? Aye. And then we'll take MC Davis Boulevard at the new sports complex.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And then the park at Gaston, the county park at Gaskin, is that,
What's the name of it now?
I can't.
County Park.
Gaskin
Gaskin County Park.
Gaskin Park.
Motion to approve.
So it would be J.C. Alford / Gaskin
Yeah.
County
I got a wet
Park.
whistle to say that, yeah.
Or could it just be J.C. Alford Park?
Yes.
Yeah, J.C. Alford.
Okay.
At Gaskin, but
Yeah.
we'll leave the Gaskin off.
Okay, do we have a motion on that yet?
Yes, motion and.
Motion and a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's all I have.
Madam Chair, can I?
Oh, no, I have fracking.
Before we move on,
Fracking.
one of the things that Okaloosa County does that we haven't done is they recognize annually a woman for a Hall of Honor. And I know that in this county, many things have been, and just looking at this, with 3 men, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I think that we have under-recognized many of the contributions that women in this county have made, and I'd like for us in the future to consider perhaps something along the lines of a Wall of Honor, and each year inducting one or more women of Walton County who've made significant contributions into that. And that's something we can take at a future time, but I'd like to see us give strong consideration to it.
Those of us women on the board, thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
And we're still alive.
And we're still alive. Yeah. All right, next I have the discussion on fracking. There's been a lot of controversy downstate on fracking. Wayne Dice has told me that we can't frack here in Walton County, but there's a lot of concerns with fracking and what it can do to the environment. And I believe the state is trying to, Mr. Davis, you stop me when I'm wrong, the state is trying to preempt us from doing anything. So I just believe we need to take a stand, whether, the state overrules us or what. But I've been talking with Sydney, and she's trying to do us an ordinance that will stop fracking in Walton County. I think if it ever happened, of course, right now, when gas, somewhere over the weekend I heard there was a war between gas stations, and it had gotten down to 49 cents a gallon. So, yeah, I mean, the gas is not always going to be this low. So with y'all's permission, I would like for us to look into having an ordinance on fracking, and say it, the state may preempt us, but I think for our citizens to feel comfortable, I think our citizens would feel comfortable, but.
I would like to have I'd like to have more information on it before we just kind of say, let's do an ordinance against it. Because it is a debate, and there are pros and there are cons, and I'd like to be able to weigh those out before I make a decision.
Okay.
I'd like to see some facts go along with it. But my understanding from the news reports last night is that the legislature is taking it up today in Tallahassee, and so that might...
We may be too late.
It might be some guidance on that, but certainly to come in and say, we've seen in the press people saying this, people saying that, and we've seen commercials on TV about how great it is and how great it's not. So, yeah, I think it would behoove us, before we take any action, let's get some facts so that we can make an informed decision.
And that's kind of what Sydney is doing along with this whole thing. She's getting all, but I just wanted you to be aware that I had spoken to her, And I guess there is a problem with two. There again, the state is deciding what's good for us, and that kind of disturbs me sometimes. We look at our citizens every day and are responsive to them every day. But anyway, that's all I have. At this time, is there any other public comment? Anyone like to comment on anything upcoming or something's on your mind you'd like to discuss? All right, seeing none, we are going to take about 10 minutes to, then we will do our planning and development services, and then we will discuss the restore projects. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, if anyone is in the room that wants to speak on the restore projects later on, we have a yellow pad, I believe, on that little table. If you want to speak, please come and sign up. Oh, did y'all hear me? Do I need to yell that again? If you're going to come and speak on the restore projects later on, if you will, please, there's a yellow pad at the little desk. Please come sign your name. All right, Mr. Carpenter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. Mr. Dice is not available this morning. He's in depositions. First item we have is a request to approve by ordinance the recreation plat fee amendment. As you may recall, when you authorize this, this is a technical fix to Chapter 11 that allows us to not have to charge a recreation plat fee on a parcel where one has already been paid. And just as a reminder, that rec plat fee is based on acreage. It's not based on the number of lots within a particular parcel. This would be the first reading of this particular ordinance as an amendment to the Land Development Code.
I thought you had something to say.
Well, he just said it. I was just going to remind you, this is the first reading, and this is to correct a simple oversight which should be included in the ordinance.
Okay.
You need a motion, Counselor?
Actually, this is the first reading. We just ask you to consider it. If you have any suggestions or changes, to let us know before the next reading, or the adoption, I guess.
Do we have any questions?
Should go ahead and set the adoption.
Yeah, we should go ahead and
date.
set the adoption hearing for the next meeting.
Be February the 9th. Okay. So anyone in the audience like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, do we want to move it on for final discussion on February the 9th after 4 p.m., 5 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
All right, the motion second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item, number 2, is a request to adopt by ordinance a small-scale amendment applied for by Dr. Michael O'Donnell. It was originally heard by this board back in 2012 as SSA 2012-11. This is the request to change a parcel to general commercial with a 1.5-acre special land use buffer that this board approved, and that was subject to the amendment of the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code policies and regulations to allow for this specific locational adjustment. This particular item has been properly advertised, and we request that you approve it by ordinance. And this ordinance only requires one hearing, so this would be the adoption hearing.
All right. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
And this is the one where we approved it, but they have to set aside a certain buffer adjacent to the residential.
Yes, ma'am. This is on Goolsby Road. You amended the code and the plan to allow for an adjustment in locational criteria that would allow this to be placed within 3,000 feet of US 98.
All right, could you
on
hold on a
Goolsby
minute? We do have to go back. He reminded me this is the beginning of our quasis. So, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone anticipates testifying before the board on any matter on the quasi-judicial docket, would you please stand and raise your right hand? We can swear you in. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth? Commissioners, any of you had any ex parte contacts that you need to disclose?
I do, and if I can find it, here it is.
There's one, and would that
Now, there's one that was sent in, I think, to everybody.
Yeah.
would that prevent you from rendering a fair and impartial decision today? All answered no. Mr. Carpenter.
Do we want to hear from Vivian, or what's your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, dear Lord in heaven, who did that? Bill Impel.
Let's wake you up.
Right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item, number 3, request to adopt by ordinance the Zeal SSA 2012-12. This is a similar request from 2012. However, we do have a notice deficiency, and staff would request.
Can you hold on? I'm sorry. I asked for comment. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Come forward. Okay. I asked for public comment.
Approved it.
Yeah, well, that's true, but he wants to comment. What else do we do? I did not see him back there.
The applicant's left.
We could hear his comment. We can hear his comment.
Up to you.
I did not see him, and I asked for comment, and I guess he did not hear me.
I didn't even hear you say
Yeah.
no comment. It was approval and went quickly.
Come forward, and
This is important.
can somebody go get Gary and them, or they?
Can I give some handouts, some diagrams?
Hand them to the clerk.
I did not see him.
Make sure he was sworn. Sir, were you previously sworn?
I did.
Okay. I wonder if he's. I'm confused. I thought it was just a plat.
Can somebody call I guess, we're going back to O'Donnell. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got one. Yes, sir. Would you state your name for the
Andrew
record?
Zarnicki.
And spell your last name, please.
C as in cat, Z as in zebra, ARNECKI. I live in the adjacent parcel, which is conservation residential 2-to-1. We have 400 to 500,000 homes. We abide by all the county's requirements from environmental protection. I think, from my personal perspective, there has been this small-scale amendment has been carefully and strategically put forth so the parcel owner can profit. You guys have systematically changed the feeder roads for this community. You've gone into the general commercial definition, and you've significantly rewritten it to benefit one or two developers. I've been on this parcel. By rewriting and changing the general commercial text that you've done, you've pre-approved the developer to have the retention pond already next to a pre-existing retention pond, which is on your diagram, which could be devastating if we were to have a significant rain or even worse, a major storm. The current zoning is appropriate for conservation residential 201. The definition states it's characterized by floodplains, wetlands, and other environmental sensitive areas. If you've been to this parcel, there's standing water consistently on this property, which I believe you guys could confirm if you wanted with the EPA or Corps of Engineers. By your definition, conservation residential, which this property is, the category is appropriate in a variety of circumstances to create a limited development potential due to environment sensitivity, including development constraints caused by the presence of saltwater, wetlands, floodplains, or habitat for endangered species. In this case, it's wetlands and it's floodplain. Bottom line, in this proposal, you're taking nearly 10 acres of property, zoned conservation residential 2-1. Nearly 50% of that is judicial wetlands by the survey you have there, and you want to convert it to general commercial, which then would let a developer who has money, in this case they do, they could put 17 dwellings per unit per acre. We purchased our land, our community, with the thought that we were in conservation residential and that we're surrounded by conservation residential. So your policies that you have written are very clear for conservation residential. Your policy that you rewrote says, which is policy L14-3, general commercial definition, quote, the county shall not assign general commercial land use category to any parcel unless there is a clear demonstration of need and the location is compatible to the surrounding areas. In this case, general commercial is available all up and down 98. There's for sale everywhere. There's buildings for sale. And it's adjacent to a residential property. 2, on Section E, it says the county shall not designate parcels located in predominantly residential areas for general commercial. This is a predominantly residential area. Again, in one case, we have a home 20 feet from the property line, the structure. So, Madam Chair, Honorable Commissioners, I truly would request that you revisit this because you're taking a sensitive wetlands next to a residential community and changing it to general commercial. And Madam Chair, I apologize that I didn't raise my hand higher enough. Questions?
Does anyone have any questions of this gentleman? Is there anyone on the board that would want to open this up for discussion again? Seeing none, we go forward. Okay, the motion stands. And it will help me, ladies and gentlemen, those of you out in the audience that are back behind people, sometimes you like when you were in first grade and knew the answer, so I can see you. So. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Now to item number 3 on your agenda. This is a request to adopt by ordinance, small scale amendment 2012-12. This was also one of the 2 proposed for change to general commercial that this board tentatively approved, subject to changing the comp plan and land development code. In this particular case, we've got a public notice deficiency on behalf of the applicant, and staff requests that this item be tabled. Once the notice is right, we'll bring it back at the appropriate time.
Okay.
So we request this one to be tabled.
Motion to table.
Second.
To a time specific, Mr. Carpenter, or just?
Tabled, and we'll
Tabled and-
re-advertise it
okay,
and bring it
all right.
back.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Question, is this the same applicant as the previous?
It's on the same roadway. The circumstances are the same, but it's on the opposite side of the road, and there's no common ownership between the 2. They're unrelated but similar requests.
All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye.
I would like to ask that, the reason that Goldsby Road, part of it turned industrial/commercial years ago. All that stuff was built out there. So I think the thinking...
Microphone.
I think one of the thoughts was that Goldsby Road, the southern part, had already gone commercial industrial, and that we really didn't want to put housing on that same road next to it, and we didn't want to intrude on the property owners to the east. So the 1.5 acre buffer was the result of. Otherwise, the applicant could have made a really good case for the surrounding land use is industrial/commercial, and so that's how that's got to be where it is.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one question, Mac. Can they put retention in this 1.5 acre buffer? Is that allowed?
That was added as an allowable use of this 1.5 acre buffer.
Okay.
When we adopted the comp plan policy change and the land development code regulation.
And if it's flood zone, they would have to get a CLOMA, and if it's wetlands, they would have to get a wetlands permit or avoid the wetlands, correct?
And we would certainly recommend they avoid the wetlands for any building out there, but yes, ma'am, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Our next item is item number 4. This is a request to adopt by ordinance the Harts Creek small-scale amendment. This is a small-scale amendment for a parcel that is presently coastal center. They're proposing to change that to coastal center mixed use. I believe it's one parcel to the west of North Holiday Road on the north side of US 98.
Isn't it immediately west of Smith's Antiques?
Yes, ma'am. The proposed use of this site would be a restaurant with a drive-through that's presently prohibited in Coastal Center, but it is specifically allowed in Coastal Center mixed use, and that's the basis of their request.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do. I have a couple
go ahead.
questions. Yeah, bring that up, Rick. Yeah, keep going with that. Okay. So they want coastal center mixed use so they can do a drive-in, and the property to the north is residential preservation. It's vacant. Looks like a rather large tract. Do you have any information on the piece to the north?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
I'm sorry. Do you have any information on the property to the north that is residential preservation? Is there a house on it, or is it a large tract, or is it?
It's presently vacant. There's a large unnumbered A zone on the north side of that particular parcel, but it's presently undeveloped.
Okay. Is it a develop? Could it be developed?
It could possibly be developed.
Okay. But there's a large. Okay.
Looks like a lot of water. Or
yeah.
Can you go back? You're moving too fast. There, stop.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is, if it is developed as residential, which it could be, and these guys come in with a drive-through, I think the site planning would need to, take that into consideration. Lights, traffic, noise, all that kind of thing. If it doesn't come in as a residential, I think the piece that's south of the flood zone could also probably go commercial center.
It could possibly. There doesn't appear to be any direct access on the south side of that parcel. The legal access is from the north side.
Is it? Okay.
Through the unnumbered A zone, so
Okay.
It might be a difficult to develop parcel.
Okay, so in that event, when the site plan would come in, I would just like to see how they're going to mitigate any of the issues. I think driveway cuts too are going to be an issue because Smith's has one, and the place next to it has one. So that would all be site planning issues, though, if it got to that point, correct?
Ma'am. And we'll certainly consider those issues related to the residential preservation land use on the north side as this project comes through the development process.
Mac, in looking at the aerial photograph that was just up there, this parcel seems to be somewhat smaller than the McDonald's parcel, which is just a little further to the west than that. It's going to be able to accommodate both a restaurant and a drive-through?
We haven't seen the proposed plans or a proposed site plan for the development site, but they seem to think that's what they want to do with it.
Well, you know, the Hardee's now has a new model. I don't know if this is going to be a Hardee's, but the Hardee's has a new model where it's a long, skinny building, and most of the service is drive-through service. People no longer get out of their cars and actually walk in a restaurant anymore. So, but if you notice the new Hardee's on 98, that's a real skinny parcel as well. But I agree with you. That's going to be a little tricky. But, you know. Is that an easement on the west side of the parcel?
I'm not sure there's an easement on the west side.
I was just looking at the survey and I saw a dotted line on the west side. Maybe the applicant can tell us. Maybe Dean can tell us.
Mr. Dean, can you come forward? State your name.
We do have the applicant's agent here for any questions.
State your name for the record, spell your last name.
Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates. I have been sworn. Madam Chairman and members of the board, I think Mac did a good job of introducing the project. Basically, our request is based on the ability to do a drive-through is the focus of the request for the amendment. As to the best of my knowledge, there is not an easement over on the west side of the property. Some of the questions that came up I know are probably more appropriate for the project review, but I can let you know it's there is a drive-through in our preliminary site plans that we've drawn. It will be a south-facing drive-through rather than north-facing as far as headlights, shining on those people. We have coordinated already with Smith's Antiques and the parcel to the west to have interconnectivity, as is encouraged, as well as DOT is on board with getting people out to the intersection rather than having a bunch of driveway cuts.
Right.
I'd be happy to entertain any further questions that the board may have.
What's to the left? What's to the west? What building is that with the parking
You may
lot?
recall, I think it was one of the home builders. It wasn't Adams Homes, but Centex Homes.
Oh, okay.
Built model homes there, and they had one as their sales center.
Yes.
And whenever they moved out of that area, now I believe one is a bank, but they're multi-purposed buildings that various businesses have occupied the model homes. Okay. And we do also have coordination with them for access, cross-access.
If you went to the women's luncheon there in that building, that's where that is.
That catering place is in the back, yeah.
There was a catering place there, yeah.
Okay. Idle curiosity, what kind of fast food are we considering?
I think I'm at liberty to share with you. It's a new chain called Culver's, and it's what I call upscale, fancy fast food. They bring it to your table and serve. You order at the counter. They bring it out to you. They have fish. They have meatloaf. It's an expanded menu from what you'd get at most fast food restaurants. So.
Where are they out?
I live close, and I'm excited about it.
Where are they out of? Where are they out of?
I believe they're out of Chicago or up in that area.
Is that Culver's?
Culvers.
I'm excited to hear that you've worked with the adjacent property owners on cross-access easements. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. And the fact that that you're working with DOT as well. So I think that's
Yeah, we
Very
had a
good.
very encouraging phone discussion with the owners of Smith's Antiques. And,
Yeah, that's good.
I'm sure we'll continue those discussions.
Very
Okay.
good. Any other questions of the applicant?
No, motion to approve,
Wait.
unless there's some.
Okay.
other
Anybody in the
people.
audience that would like to comment on this project at this time? Raise your hand.
Jump up.
All right, jump up. Seeing none, what's your pleasure?
Cindy motion.
Yeah, I move that we approve the
Okay.
land use.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Is everybody looking it up on their iPad?
We already have people ordering their meals from this restaurant.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Could you hold on a minute, Mac? We got to order lunch.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Next item is agenda item number 5. This is a request to approve the final Mylar for the Gulf Place Retreat plat. This is a parcel that's located on the south side of Louva Lane in the Gulf Place area of our 30A neighborhood. Previously approved by development order. This is the final plat and the final approval as part of that particular development. All fees have been paid.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Does the applicant here want to share with us anything? We don't have an applicant? Okay. Anyone in the audience like to comment on this project? Seeing none, what's your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 6, this is a request to approve by final Mylar the Vanway Beach subdivision replat. This is a replat of 2 lots that are immediately west of the Fort Panic public beach access. This is really a cleanup of a previous plat that addresses access to the beachfront lot, setbacks, and make sure that the county still has an easement to get to the beach in front of that particular park.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
So this doesn't eliminate any county access or public rights of way or anything?
No, ma'am, it actually protects the county access that was coming across a bit of private property.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Come forward, please. State your name for the record and spell your last name.
Good morning. My name is Darrell Burgess, B-U-R-G-I-S. I'm with Emerald Coast Associates. I am the land surveyor of record who prepared the plat and representing the owner. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you may have them, but I believe all the fees are paid. As Mr. Carpenter says, it really is to clean up, if you will, some technicalities and legal issues. Thank you.
Are these platted to the mean high water?
No, ma'am. In
Okay.
fact, there was a bit of a land swap between the previous owners of these lots, where the parcel south of the plat, it's about 70 feet in depth, north and south. That's actually owned by Walton County and made part of the Fort Panic Park.
Okay, great. Okay, good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, ladies and gentlemen?
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We will now move into our Restore Act projects.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Ms. Melinda and Bill? You wanna- Who? I can't hear you. Yes, we've got, she's working on it.
Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Jeez Louise.
said, there have not but one, well, how many are there? Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 is 35. Okay, yeah. See, I can add. But we'll start with Mr. Williams and Ms. Gates, you know.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity. The process that primarily that has been orchestrated with Melinda and with the public and our Restore Committee has evolved quite a few and I think well-selected projects. I think as you review them today, I think it's imperative that the board understand that part of the component that we're looking at is the leverage dollars and the interlinkage as far as strategy to some of the other pots of money, such as Pot 3 and Triumphs and some of the things there. So I think as you review these projects and their value to the county, we look at process, not just project, and where this will be at our end game and where we are both in monitoring and outcome. So my suggestion to the board is as you look at this, to give us some time to look at additional funding. Some of these may offer opportunity with the state, with the federal government and different agencies, particularly as we go through. But I think the projects are well intended, and I'll let Melinda go through the specifics of the projects. I just wanted to add that component of leveraging and in process that I think it's important that you all make a decision on.
He actually stole my thunder. He's getting me back, I also agree. I work very closely with Billy and Melinda on the Restore and that sort of thing. And I think in order for us to capture every potential funding that we have out there, funding sources with BP and then grants and everything else that we get, Ms. Gates and Mr. Williams to review all the submittals and compare them to, what can we leverage with. I think one of the things that we discussed yesterday, for example, there's in one of these proposals, it's something about a school or a learning environment. We're all trying to get one of the hatcheries here and one of those. That would be a great project to try to tie in and go to Game and Fish, hey, let's put this educational component with this. Let's see what money we can get because of an educational component and put that together. So I think we need to look at these, but we also need to see how can we leverage everyone to get more, bang for the buck, I guess is the word you want to use, and make sure that it fits into our multi-year plan. I did see Melinda on television last night. She did an absolutely fabulous job. And she is right. Just because something doesn't make this year, we only have, $5 million. But there's also Pot 2 out there that we need to consider, as well as our Pot 3 money, which is right at $12 million. So we have a lot of moving parts here that I want to make sure that any way we can leverage and bring more money to this county, let's do it. So.
And if I may, for the benefit of the public as well as everybody else, for the reminder of how we got through this process, I just wanted to go through a quick history of what we've done. So back in 2013, that's when we developed the local Restore Committee. And that Restore Committee was responsible for creating an application and evaluation process. So back in February of 2015, they presented a application as well as the evaluation process for your approval, which was approved. Starting in April 1st of 2015 up to July 31st of 2015, we accepted project submittals for the direct component funding. After all of them have been submitted, the total ended up being 42 projects. They totaled up over $60 million. So as you can see through that total, we would not be able to fund all of them this particular round, but we're hoping to at least capture a good portion of these projects. So where we're at this point is in December, we presented a ranking list, which the Local Restore Act Committee put together. It was a 1 through 42 ranking list. It just was according to their particular score. From that ranking list and a couple other variables, including looking at stormwater projects, looking at the differences between mini grants as well as regular projects. And as a reminder about mini grants are those projects that could be that would be in between $50,000 and $100,000 and can be completed within a 2-year time frame. So we wanted to kind of differentiate between those types of projects. So using that variable and the other variables, we came up with a recommendation list that we presented to you guys at the last Board of County Commissioners meeting. So that included 16 projects out of the 42 that could potentially be funded. It also acknowledged high-ranking projects that could potentially be phased. So, for instance, we may have approached those higher-ranking applicants and asked them if, at this time, do you feel like this particular project could be phased out to incorporate just a smaller amount so we can have more projects that we can work with at this time? So, depending on how you want me to handle this, do you want me to go through all 16 and discuss those, or?
Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure? What would you like for us to do?
I just have a couple questions. So the total scores, you know, and the handout that we have has them ranked according to the total scores.
Correct.
So my question would be, how many of once you got through these with the total score and you shaved off, you know, the prices to where you got down to the first phase or a number they could accept, how many more got included, and what were those that got scooped into the process by the elimination of some of the prices of the top 16?
Certainly. The projects the number 2 project was an artificial reef project. It was approximately $2.7 million as the original proposal. After discussing it with the applicant, we removed the deployment component of that particular project at this time, just because we do have some other deployment that's going on, as well as some other projects that were highly ranked that we were trying to get some artificial reef deployments, and reduced it down to around $400,000, which would be solely the monitoring component of that particular project. There was another particular project that we asked for phasing, and that particular project was associated with an agritourism business, and rather than having a 3-year time frame, we requested that they reduce it down to a 2-year time frame. They could seek leveraging of funding for the additional year if needed be. With that, the reduction of that particular amount of money, we were able to incorporate quite a few more stormwater projects, which would benefit a good portion of South Walton County.
Okay, my question is too, how did you determine which projects to ask to phase their big number?
The ones that we went through were actually the top ranked, highest projects. So there was, for instance, the artificial reef project that we just discussed.
Right.
That one was number 2 on the ranking list.
Okay.
It was a very high price dollar tag project.
Okay.
The next one we asked to phase was a coastal dune lake hydrologic restoration project.
Right.
And that one was also very highly ranked, but very high cost price. So we reduced that one down from almost a $3 million project to under a $1 million project.
What's the total number on that again? Do you have that?
Excuse me. The coastal dune lake hydrologic restoration project originally was it was a $2.1 million project, and now we're reducing it down to $988,000.
Okay. Okay.
By phasing the project.
Okay, and then were there any others that were phased?
The other one that was requested to phase was the Muskogee Nation of Florida microfarm, which is an agritourism project.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and what, they went from 715,000 to what?
Down to $480,000.
Okay. Yeah, because some of the ones I have on here, some of the ones show the phasing. Well, no, I guess all of them, none of them show the phasing. Okay, never mind.
There's 2 documents. The one that you might be looking at has gold stripes through it. That identifies the mini grant projects versus the regular project, but that's just the ranking list.
Okay.
There is a recommendation list as well that was included.
Okay.
That
I'm
has
sure I
those
have
listed
that.
as well as the phase.
I'm sure I have that somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it in our book?
It should be.
Okay, I need to get my book back.
think, yeah, I have so many different pages of it. Okay, so, and now what was the reason the Marine Enhancement Center $13 million project was not requested to be phased?
It was a $13 million project. The concern at this time with that particular project is that the main component would be the building. And unfortunately, that building was very expensive. So you needed that building to move forward with anything else. So the hope is that maybe we look at that particular project and maybe mold it into something different for the future.
And another project that had over $1 million price tag would be, of course, the Intermodal Transportation Innovation Program. It was $1.350 million. Now, why wasn't that requested to be phased?
At this time, it was not requested to be phased only because it was ranked number 15 on the list. We only got through, if we were to only fund the top ranked projects, did not consider mini grants versus regular grants, we would only be able to fund the first 8.
Okay.
So with that, that's why we were taking just the top ranked projects and trying to phase those.
Okay, and then did you end up with any money left over after all this was done?
There was approximately 100. I believe it was like $124,000 left, which we do need to keep in mind that the county is probably going to be applying for, whenever we apply for these grants, there's this component called an administrative cost. So that's going to cover staff time as well as any other administrative things that we need to do as the county to administer these particular grants.
Okay.
So that's where we were trying to budget in that little bit of extra.
Okay.
Melinda, I've got a question. Had you asked all of the submitters to phase theirs, could that have provided you with a different number of projects to look at beyond the 16?
It may have provided us more options, but because we only asked the first top ranked projects, that consumed the majority of the money.
Well, I understand it, but I mean, but you only asked several to phase theirs.
Correct.
If all of them had been asked to phase and come up with new numbers of what they needed for phasing, would you have been able to put your arms around more projects?
Possibly.
We don't know for sure. I mean, we have $5 million this round, and then
correct,
and then $5 million the next round. So yeah.
And when do you think the next round will hit?
And actually, I believe what's going to happen from the literature that I've read is the next rounds is going to be associated with the BP penalties. It is expected that those penalties will come out in 2017. We're actually probably only looking at around $1 million to $2 million at that time that will go into the account. We can let it sit there and wait for it to build up, but there might be some Treasury leniency that comes out in between now and then that allows us also potentially for bonding or something of that sort.
Okay.
Billy, do you have any ideas on that as well? I mean, I know you both work together, but you work more on the political side. She's our
Yeah,
lady.
I think Commissioner Enfield brought a very good point. I think the scenario is that the trap that a lot of counties are looking at is looking at just the projects or the dollars that are available. It's like a comprehensive plan or a capital expenditure plan. You need to look at its entirety in the process. The dollar amount available should not dictate sort of where you're trying to go with your end process. So I think it's important that the question you had about vetting some of these projects, and again, they're very well done, but I think some of these projects that need to be linked to other processes need to be looked at, not just in the funding. We are working with Congresswoman Graham and Congressman Miller and their staff. She brings up a very good point about bonding. If we can't bond, we're going to be in a very difficult component over the 15-year spread of the dollars. But the interlinking to Triumph, to our economic community, that's where I stress to the board that we need to spend more time focusing on that so we don't get caught in those individual projects, because I think your point is very valid. And how we scale these projects. But what is the end game? I think that's what I would again impress upon you.
Yeah, and that's what we're basically asking you to do is give us time to allow us to move forward, and and with our multi-year plan and represent the county's goals and objectives and kind of align them with the Restore Act and the most efficient manner in which we can capture these dollars. And I think that's what they're both trying to do, both at a different, they're working together, but they're working on other levels as well.
Okay, the list that's in my Granicus is the same list that I have printed out. I don't find a list that has the top projects with their new numbers in them. And I could just be missing it somewhere. Does anybody know where that is?
The document should be titled Walton County Direct Component Funding Recommendations.
This is Walton County Direct
Okay,
Funding
there's an
Recommendation.
attachment to it.
I think if you look at the far right-hand column,
This one?
it's got scoring that goes from highest to lowest, and
That is
Right.
I'm assuming
But there's no.
There's
but
those 1
see-
through 16,
But
right?
see, there's no, and on the numbers, it still shows the artificial reef project at 2.7.
It's a-
I don't see anything that shows the revised phasing numbers. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Then is she saying this is it? Do you have a legal? There's
I don't think it's in
No,
Granicus.
I
I don't think
have
it's in Granicus.
I
It's
don't
not
have that.
Granicus.
I
Yeah.
share. We get some made. Why don't we just take a few minutes and we'll go get some made? 'Cause this is,
What? Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks. Do you want this back? Melinda, do you need it? Yeah, you might need it. They're going to get us, they might. They're going to give us copies.
Do we want to
yeah.
wait for just a minute till we get that, or you want to go forward? I think it's important that we have it if we're going to discuss it. Yeah, let's wait just a minute,
Yeah.
So.
You can look at mine.
Well, I mean, I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Williams had said, is it not only is it the dollars and how it can be stretched as far as possible with phasing, but the linkage to the other possible sources of revenue, whether it's grants or some other direct funding from perhaps even the legislature, that needs to be looked at on this thing here. And again, I'm concerned that we didn't go to all 42 and say, can you phase your programs, and what would the dollar impact on that be, and what other linkage do you have to potential grants and legislative funding that would help
Your
move
cause, yeah.
move as many as possible forward, and at the same time, some of these might not necessarily be linked to more Pot 1 funding. It might be if we can get them the initial phase, that they can then link themselves to other outside funding.
But I don't think it would, and correct me if it might reduce the cost somewhat, but because the Restore Committee ranked these, it wouldn't change the ranking.
That's correct. Yeah, the
Wouldn't
ranking
change,
was associated with the evaluation process.
We asked the Restore Committee to rank them for us, and they did. Even though, all of them might be reduced somewhat, the ranking would still be the same from the committee. Now, we don't have to take their recommendation, but the ranking would still be
But
the same.
I'd like to see as much
I understand.
as accomplished as possible, and the fact that the linkage aspect of it to other sources of money, once you get the money in there, to me is important, as well as the fact that we only picked a few people to go say, can you phase yours, when we probably should have asked all 42.
Asking public.
And that's what I think Mr. Williams and I are both asking, that let's look at these, but let's give them time to look and come back to us with what we can link with what. I mean, like the car project.
I
for
think,
example,
though,
yeah.
wasn't one of the criteria that y'all ranked was linkage to other funds. So, see, these rankings have already looked at all of that kind of thing.
Leveraging was a part of the application process. It was actually associated with forming their cost estimate. They had to show what they were requesting from Restore dollars and what they could do as a cash match, what they could do from other grants. So they were supposed to provide all that information for leveraging anyways, and many of them did. Several of the projects were able to show leveraging through that process.
Right, and so I think when they went through and did their criteria, there was a pretty extensive, rigorous list of criteria, and that's how they came up with these numbers. So, I'd like to go by their numbers, but if anybody has a project that they think, they can persuade us that it needs to be
I
funded,
agree.
I think that's who I'm looking to hear from.
And we have more well, not more pots necessarily, but more, now that Triumph has gotten, not quite their feet on the ground, but they're getting there. There's the Triumph money. There's the Pot 3 money that the consortium, decided ad nauseum to, so we have that money.
Some of these projects too, if you give them a little bit of money, they can get started.
They certainly can.
And some of this stuff is just getting started and getting the process going, getting everything kind of set in place, and then when you leverage it and more money comes in, you're ready to go. So if you get a little bit of money up front, you can get going, and I think that's kind of what I'm interested in too, is how many of these can we get off the ground and going that we think would be good projects in the future, even though we can't give them all the money they ask for.
How many small projects, I know you've told me, but, under 100,000?
We had 12 mini grant projects that were submitted and 30 regular projects that were submitted.
And what was the total amount of funding for the mini grants that you suggested that be approved?
The maximum amount that could be designated per what we got approved by the board was $289,463.88. That's 5% of the total funds available.
Okay, and then of that, how many are y'all recommending in this recommendation?
3.
3, and what do those equal as far as dollars?
$280,000.
Okay.
But wouldn't some, it goes back to exactly what Commissioner Meadows said, is that sometimes if you can just get some money into the game, these other opportunities might be able to take them along without having to rely totally on this. And it seems like we got the big dollar ones that we're throwing a lot of money at, and we're not necessarily looking at some of the other mini grant projects that could have benefited most from either phasing them or phasing some of the other ones. That's my concern.
Yeah, I think you're right. Could some of these projects shave off, in other words, Coastal Dune Lake Hydrologic Restoration Project, are they going to be able to spend almost $1 million in the next 9 to 12 months?
A portion of it, yes. It will require design and permitting prior to any construction that can occur on that particular project.
Okay. I mean, just looking at the ones that have high dollar values that could maybe be further phased, that would be one of them, because we have $100,000 set aside in another account, and that would be one of them. And then the rest of them look like they're pretty, they're 100,000 or under. The agritourism project is almost $500,000. Sometimes you can get the money, you can't spend it, and you can't get your permits and spend it in a year. That's been my experience.
Correct, but the regular projects are not time limited. They do have a proposed time frame for completing their projects.
Okay.
The only ones that we had time limited on were the mini grants, and those were projects that could be completed within a 2-year time frame. So the 3 that were recommended either will not have that permitting phase that could delay a project, and they could go ahead and get started on them.
So is this a true statement that the shaving down and cutting down some of the big numbers allowed us to bring in all of the stormwater projects?
No, that's we were only able to incorporate. We originally submitted 11 stormwater projects.
Okay.
We only incorporated 8 of those 11 by shaving down some of the larger projects.
Okay. Well, 8 is still a good amount, and we're talking about how we're going to get those 8, done. How we're going to get that done. So, okay, all right. Okay, those are all the questions I have.
Let me make a comment. Commissioners, I'll give you an example. Some of the things, and part of this is we're following these guidelines because of Treasury
directives on how this has to be interplayed from public involvement in the committee. And again, I sort of emphasize the trap. I'll give you an example. One of the projects when I first came to the county was the expansion of an economic corridor on 331, a project that was not submitted. And again, you have to realize the confines of which this committee works. They were assigned to Public One, and most of your applicants are not, some of them are, but most of them are not experts in a lot of the different funding sources, both state, federal, Triumph, and we deal with it every day, and it's very confusing. So, but part of it, again, goes back to your long-term planning. If, for example, the city of Freeport, which they have a 67% match availability with their wastewater expansion north on 331, that was not submitted because they made the decision to look at a mini grant in the process to study the stormwater. But the issue there, if we have the time and the availability, and again, these have to go back through the committee and be vetted unless we're looking at Pot 3 or restore dollars outside of Pot 1 because the committee's not involved with that component. But that would be a recommendation, and I think part of my job to recommend to you, that's a great match of Pot 1 money or Pot 3 money because it ties to our economic linkages. So again, you have to realize you're looking at Treasury criterion, which we have to follow, but you also have to set the pace and the vision of where you're connecting to. And I agree with you, Commissioner, that it does give projects availability and dollars to move, but what is it linked to from the five of you and the vision that you want?
Well, yeah,
you know,
yes,
for example, the innovative and unmanned vehicles, we just heard the transit studies and the things that are there. I think there's some opportunity there with FDOT and DOT to move those type projects. But it's difficult to move that. And again, it's a lot of lobbying, but you also don't want to give I saw a lot of the grants are opportunities that were 100% match, where we can do a better job of linking them into certain factions. But more importantly, for example, you put $1 million into stormwater out of general funding. How does that link back to those particular projects? How can we work with the municipalities? So I think that there's some connectivity that I would, again, ask that we really study because they're great projects, but where they link. And I think it goes back to Commissioner Enfield's point that some of these projects that didn't make the cut of 16 may need to be revisited because they play into a bigger part of what we're trying to do long term. If that's the case, we bring that, if it's Pot 1 funding, we bring that back to the committee or back to the applicant so we can help them expand that. We are under, you know, it's again like a capital improvement or a comp plan. You have the availability, put this in your multi-year plan, because then Treasury allows us to work it, and it'll be an ongoing process, and we won't know that they're going to get the funding if it's CDBG or USDA or NOAA or whatever it may be. But you got some good opportunities. The comment about the school is a great linkage. If we tie that in, I can go back to NERDA, we can go back to Fish and Wildlife, and say the county has committed X number of dollars. The money that you did for broadband could be tied into a lot of these. So we want to make sure we get credit, and we know what that interim vision is.
All right. Does anyone have any more questions of these two at this time? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that we were just provide this list of the approved projects as of right now, correct? And there are 8 water projects on there, stormwater projects.
That's correct.
And they're both north and south of the bay.
That is correct.
And I see there's been some reduction in the cost associated with even those projects. And one thing that I've advocated when this first came out was that we need to address our stormwater. That's been a problem over the last several years. It's not to say any of these other projects are not well-meaning and have benefit. They do. But again, it comes down to us, as I said, it's the priority of where we want to try and put some of this money to address those ongoing issues and problems we've had for the last several years, especially during the storm events. So I don't know where we're going to go on the board with this project here, but I stand by and wait and see what everybody else has to say.
I do have one more question since you brought that up. We were going to look at what the design. We were going to look at what the design permitting and CEI that was going to be taken out of the TIF was going to be. And do you have that number?
Yes, ma'am. So the TIF is only allowed for projects that are south of the bay. So what we would be looking at is 6 out of those 8 projects that are on the recommendation list, we would be looking at $435,564.72 that would be applied to design, permitting, and CEI for those particular projects. And then the two that are north
Out of the TIF.
Out of the TIF, correct. And then the two that are north of the bay, we were going to be looking at the Stormwater Infrastructure Fund to pool the design, permitting, and CEI out of that, which helped with leveraging for those particular projects as well.
Didn't we move that stormwater infrastructure fund into the TIF?
I think we did.
We did. We did. Yeah. So that's just something to consider.
Okay.
What about the TIF on 331? We did implement that too.
Did, but, yeah.
But I know it's not generating a whole lot of money, but probably
Once
not
it gets
even
going, it will be.
get this stuff.
Once it gets going, it will.
It
It
will.
will.
Yeah. But, you know, I agree with everything that everybody said here so far, and I think one of the criteria that I look at is, you know, how many of all of our citizens will be affected by what we do. And every project, all 42 are, I think, marvelous projects, but which projects will benefit
the most people,
especially in the first round, you know.
Well, also, I'd like to commend those entities out there that were reached out and talked to about possibly phasing in their project.
Yes.
I mean, one that comes to mind is Andy. I don't know if he's here or not. He may be. He's back there in the corner. He and I just talked about it, and, you know, this is a project that he's willing to phase in over a period of time. And because he had a significant chunk of that $5.7 million or whatever it was. So, again, thank you, Andy, for working with us on that. And it may be available to some of the other folks in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
If you have no further questions of these two, we'll go ahead and start hearing from the people that have signed up. I will take them as they signed in. We have Ann Tucker with Muskogee Nation. Each one of you have 5 minutes, which is 2 minutes more than we usually give you. So
While they're
you have
coming
5
up,
minutes. Yeah.
Did the applicants come to the committee, to the council, and present their projects, Melinda? Was there any?
Yes, ma'am. We've
They did.
given multiple opportunities for each of the applicants to come.
Oh, okay.
We, when the committee was reviewing those applications, they reviewed them initially, and then we set it up so that it was about 10 at a time.
Okay, good.
That
So
came
they
in and-
did.
yes.
So they did have the okay. Good.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Tucker, would you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
I am Ann Tucker, Tucker. I am chairwoman of Muskogee Nation of Florida, the Florida Tribe of Eastern Creek Indians. We are located in District 1 in Commissioner Chapman's area, and our project is the agritourism project that you are discussing. When I set this project up for BP Restore, one of the things that I made certain that I did was compartmentalize it. And I also looked for who could be on the outside to help us to defray the cost of this project. With the negotiations, we've lost the third year of this project. Do we need it? Yeah, we do. Can we give it up? It's not in our immediate plan. Yes, and we can seek funding from federal and local sources and from state forces, from other sources, which we plan to do. This project is important to this tribe. How did BP affect us? We're on the interior. I can tell you how it affected us because we fed 700 people a week ago. We set up a pantry to feed people who were displaced. We are still feeding people in the county. This project is an agritourism project. It's a project about food. It's a project to teach children how to grow food, how to use alternative methods of energy, how to look at farming as something besides I go to Publix and I pick up an eggplant. Somewhere along the line, you start working with your local children and teaching a better way to do business. That's what this project is. It's a partnership that's going to go into all your schools, I hope. It is utilizing a marvelous group of people. We went to Engineers Without Borders. They are like Doctors Without Borders. They're an international corporation. This project has been approved at the international level. We have had a local chapter assigned to us. These are engineers that come into the bases. We have a person from Corps of Engineers. We have a person with alternative energy. These are skills we do not have. But as a result, from the skills of Engineers Without Borders, who cannot give us money, they give us time and expertise, from 2 universities, from the Farm Extension Services, from forestry, from different groups of people, we were able to take care of 30% of this project. It can be done. It takes time, and you have to work it, and it can be done. When I put this project together, I'm looking at my time, when I put this project together, I did it by years. And I kept a timeline of every item that we would be doing over every year, by every month, and every person assigned to it, so that this project was on target, it was on time, and it was under control. This is an important project for this county. It's an important project to bring people into the interior. It's an important project to grow food. That pantry that we still have, we will never have surplus produce. It will be feeding people inside your county. Today, after 6 years, we are the only USDA commodities place in the state of Florida that handles the needs of 3 counties. That was not what we signed up for, but it's what we do. We cannot do this project without your help and support. I realize that there are important issues in this county. The tribe can't do this without your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Any questions of her, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sorry. All right, next we have Jay Lyles. Yes, ma'am.
Is the public allowed to say something? I won't take more than 1 minute.
I'm going by the names of the people who signed up to speak, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Huh?
At the end.
Are you an applicant or are you with Ms. Tucker?
I'm a friend of the Muskogee Tribe of Florida.
Okay. It's your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. You wanted to speak at the end? It's your
It's my district. If she's going to hold it to about a minute and support.
No, ma'am, you cannot. You need to come up. We will give you.
Up here, we'll go ahead and get that.
We'll give you 2 minutes time. How's that? Because state your name for the record, please, and spell your last name.
My name is Jan. The last name is Stevens. And I came as a friend
You
of the
spell it
Muskogee.
for us, please.
I'm sorry?
Would you spell your last name?
Oh, excuse me. Stevens.
Thank you.
I actually was introduced by the Muskogee tribe 5 years ago, Sarah, by you. And I truly did not believe that we had the condition that we have in the northeast part of our county. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure, but there are a lot of us that are not aware of the situation. I have become aware of the situation, and I have become extremely impressed with their ability to organize and help pull themselves up by the bootstraps and pull the people up by the bootstraps that are around them. They have organized an incredible group of professionals. Not me, I'm just a friend. But I was very impressed this week with meeting with the Engineers Without Borders, meeting with influential people in your county. I cannot imagine that there will be one person that will not be touched by this project. It is an incredible project to teach children. It is an incredible project to grow food, to put into the pantry. They have gotten so much of their professional planning gifted. So the money that we now need is truly for bulldozers. It is for wood. It is for things that we cannot have gifted to us. That was it. I just wanted to say thank you for the consideration.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Lyles?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If it's all right, I'm going to ask Robert Davis and Tom Stein to come up as well, and then we'll just share our time and try to keep this well under the time.
Each one of them has signed up, so.
Sure. And I think, if you don't mind, we'll do it however you want to do it then.
15 minutes, because all 3 of them?
We don't even need 15.
Okay. Yeah, what kind of do you think?
I'm going to introduce, and then they're going to take over
We've set
this.
some time, so we're doing well right now. You just go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Jay Lyles, that's Liles, and I'm here on behalf of the Seaside Institute. I have on the phone Dr. Joachim Tiber, who is one of our partners. In case there are any questions, he won't need to speak. He just wants to be available to you in case there's questions. We're the partnership with the International Transportation and Innovation Center, or ITIC, that brought forward the intermodal transportation proposal for 30A to bring people along 30A and to bring people down to 30A from north to end of the county. The transit system we envision is very different from traditional mass transit. What we propose is an assortment of trolleys, club cars, or glorified golf carts, you might call them, and electric vehicles from buses to bikes, most self-piloted. Let me repeat that. These would be self-piloted, or what they call autonomous vehicles in the industry. And while this sounds sort of futuristic, it's happening right now. People are driving Audis and Teslas and other vehicles, Mercedes, that are piloting themselves. So we're not talking about something that's completely so far-fetched that it's not available. It is, in fact, coming to us very quickly. Our goal is to get people who are visiting here, working here, and living along 30A to leave their personal vehicles behind and to remotely park in facilities off-site and use these smaller vehicles, these autonomously piloted vehicles, to move about 30A. Multiple options, very reliable, very consistent. As you pointed out earlier, Commissioner Meadows, you call it up on your phone, it tells you I'll be there in a minute and 15 seconds. And that's what we're talking about. Now, I know we created a little confusion in your minds, probably a lot of confusion about the amount of money we were requesting. It comes out on your report as $1.35 million. That was actually over a 3-year period. And go back to July, we didn't know about all of the leveraging opportunities that were available to us. We didn't know that the Department of Transportation really wants to see you all do this as a pilot project, and they'll be presenting that to you soon. We put forward a proposal that had $550,000 as the first year. Can we work with you all to phase that in and reduce that amount? Yes, indeed. We'd like to have that opportunity, but we're not on the current list. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about today. And now I'd like to ask Tom Stein if he would take part of my time and give you his presentation, and then Mr. Davis, if that's all right. Thank you.
Yes, I said you've all three signed up, so, y'all are good. Yeah, just keep it.
Keep on moving. I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you that I'm here to speak in favor of public transit. Tom Stein, S-T-E-I-N.
Thank you, sir.
I've got 4 thoughts that I'd like to share with you. David Haight, in the presentation he made earlier, demonstrated that public transit appears to be feasible and would probably be used. I think it's government's role to provide public transit, just as it provides roads and law enforcement for people in the private vehicles. It needs to provide transit to those who don't own vehicles. Parking is clearly and closely related to transit. Parking problems go away if we don't have as many private vehicles on the road. And here's an opportunity for the county to fund transit that can be a draw. I mean, autonomous vehicles, state-of-the-art technology, everybody's going to try it if they come down here. That'll be a convenience at no cost to the taxpayers, with a likelihood that it'll attract further financial help from the state DOT, probably the federal government, and certainly from private industry. Dr. Tiber could speak volumes of the automotive and technological companies that would like to jump into this project if it actually begins. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Davis?
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Robert Davis, D-A-V-I-S. Yogi Berra once described a place like Panama City Beach as, it's too crowded, nobody goes there anymore. And I think 30A is approaching the tipping point where the kind of people who discovered 30A a few years ago and come there and love it, and by the way, pay a lot in real estate taxes, a lot in sales taxes, and have created an amazing economic engine, are beginning to be turned off by the traffic congestion, by the lack of ability to park and by the problems that this is creating. We just saw one of the great draws of 30A, the 30A Songwriters Festival, demonstrate the viability of transit, because they ran a shuttle system that took people from one venue to the next, and as I understand it, a majority of their participants, the people who were going to their concerts, used the shuttle system because parking was so difficult. And this is a great demonstration that this can work. I think it can work even more easily with the help of Uber or Lyft technology and vehicles that can be called up on demand and take you smoothly and safely from one place to another, allow you to go out to dinner and not have a designated driver, for example. The 30A is an amazing collection of small towns and villages, old and new urbanism, to which people flock to study, to learn lessons about how to plan or replan their own communities. But people also flock simply to come to the beach, to be in a place where they can walk most of the time, they can park their car and leave it, their kids can be free. And this is one of the beauties of 30A. 30A, I think, will become a beacon in another way if we're able to do this innovative transportation project, get people out of their vehicles, get them into really pleasant rides that are convenient and avoid the problems of parking that are keeping people from moving from one end of 30A to the other during spring break and summer. This project, as Mr. Lyles suggested, can be highly leveraged. The Florida DOT has given us an amazing amount of support, including having the Secretary come over and give the keynote speech for our October workshop, and the Undersecretary in charge of innovation stay there for the whole time, and then meet with us again in Jacksonville and explain to us all the matching grant programs they have that will allow them to support this project, to adopt 30A, to invest money in 30A, fixing the drainage problems, among other things, if the county will get behind it, if the county will put some skin in the game. The federal DOT will soon be making grants under a program to encourage infrastructure investment for transit-oriented development. Well, we already have the transit-oriented development in 30A. We have walkable towns and cities that are a beacon for the world, and I think we can make 30A an even more amazing beacon if we start investing in this project. This is a multi-year project. It can be phased in many ways. I think we can get a lot of leverage from DOT, federal and state, and from all of the manufacturers who are willing to contribute money, expertise, vehicles, etc. The environmental benefits of this project are pretty obvious because you're going to get a lot of gas guzzlers off the road and replace them with battery-powered vehicles. But we also hope to work with the forestry department to allow some of these vehicles to give interpretive rides through the state forest and show people the ecosystem restoration project that is slowly converting a slash pine plantation into a longleaf pine forest ecosystem. And finally, and I think perhaps most important for the Restore Act, is that this is going to be a job creator where the International Transportation Innovation Center is planning to open a Florida branch and to have a research station in Seaside and also somewhere near Freeport, a test track and a place to educate their master's and PhD students, but also Freeport High School students in this new and evolving technology. Once that track is there, we're also talking, or I should say Dr. Tiber's talking to Mercedes-Benz about creating a classic car center where students from around the country will be taught how to restore and preserve older cars, and that too can be a great opportunity for the students from Freeport. I'm prejudiced, obviously, but I think 30A is a great place, and I think that this is a fantastic project and a wonderful opportunity for Walton County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair, I've got a question for Mr. Lyles. Actually, I've got two questions. Mr. Lyles, I think you said at the beginning, and Mr. Davis, I think you reinforced, this could be phased.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm going to ask you two questions. One, what would the phased amount for the first year be that you could bring it down to? And number two, you mentioned transportation and forestry. Do you have any other partners that you could help to provide leverage for additional funding?
Sure. Do you want to answer, or do you want me to answer?
Go ahead.
So we think that at a minimum, this county needs to put skin in the game, which is then going to tell a whole lot of developers like Club Car and the bus company, electric bus company Proterra, that you're serious about fixing the 30A transportation problem. And when you do, they've told us through Dr. Tiber that they want to partner with us. They want to come in with equipment, money, and manpower to help us design the program. As we began to unfurl this idea, we started talking to the Department of Transportation, and as Mr. Davis pointed out, there are grant programs that say they want to help you figure out how to do mass transit. And the state of Florida has told us they want to do mass transit with these autonomous vehicles. They want to, if you are willing, they would like to talk with you about turning 30A into what they call a pilot project. And they will provide match dollars. So we've talked with Lyle Ziegler in District 3. He is excited about this. I'm sorry, I don't believe Lyle was able to come today, but I hope you'll reach out to him. He's been talking to Chance Powell about it, and we think that this is a really golden opportunity. We just need to get into your multi-year implementation plan so that private funders and public funders can say, the county wants to fix this, let's figure out how to leverage these dollars.
And I think that was Mr. Enfield's question.
Do you have an
How
initial-
much money initially, if you could cut your project down, so
Okay,
you know,
so
what's the
around
least you could do with?
$120,000, we'd
Okay.
like to do a workshop with you all and with these product and technology providers so you can see what the state of the art is and get a better picture for what is available to us out there. And if we had around $250,000, we can do that workshop. We can do the planning and the design and the grant submittals with professional grant writers to get the federal dollars and the U.S. and the state dollars drawn down.
I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood. You think it would take $250,000 to do a workshop?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, I misunderstood.
I'm sorry. $120,000 right in the area. We could do a workshop. We can start writing the grants. We just can't deploy any of the equipment right now is what our thinking is. But I'd really like to open that dialogue with you and have Dr. Tiber be able to talk with you about what we can do. He is, in fact, the gentleman who's got the technical wizardry to make this happen. But let's focus on a workshop with you all. Let's focus on getting these grants submitted so we can bring down those U.S. DOT and state dollars. Again, a lot of moving parts, and we need to have the county say, yes, we're in the game, and yes, we would consider opening this up to a pilot project to accomplish this.
Any other questions?
No, I've got an observation. The amount he's asking for now falls within the range of the mini grant program that we're talking about. And also, if I count correctly, they were ranked 15th
Yes, sir.
overall,
Yes, sir.
even though they couldn't, but with the numbers you had there. So as we proceed, I'd like at least to have Melinda and Billy go back and talk about, there's the option for phasing here. It's a high-ranked one, and it could possibly qualify for your mini grant aspect of it. Thank you.
And I got the idea that when you first met with the committee, you didn't have all these possibilities of interconnectivity, but now it's as it is
Yes, ma'am.
evolving, you're getting more and more. That's
Ma'am, after we attended the summit in Jacksonville and we held this meeting with the high-level folks at DOT, and after Secretary Boxall came here, and you've noted that there's a letter of endorsement from the Senate Transportation Chairman. There's a real energy here to say we want to see this kind of project happen in the DOT District 3, and this is the best place you could do it in Florida.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Did we ask, is Ann still here? Ms. Tucker? How much, if you could cut your project down, did she say? I'm sorry, what? Okay, so how much is it?
How much blood do I
For
have to give here?
Oh, come, bleed for me. So, 480.
I'm
All right,
down
ma'am.
to 480.
All right, gotcha. I just didn't have that figure in front of me. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and I didn't even ask you, are there any questions with ours? I forgot to ask. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had one quick question. You mentioned you were serving 3 counties, obviously Walton.
Yes,
What are
we
the other
are.
2?
We are in Holmes, Washington, and Walton because of our location in Bruce. We're the only USDA commodities program that does that, and they've been using our methods on some of the other commodities programs. And commodities is another issue, but I didn't want to do that today.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your little book you had with everything lined up. You've gone to a lot of.
We did. We went to a lot of planning trouble on this project, and I don't know if you've seen the project, and if you want copies, I can provide it to each of you.
And we have it. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it so much. I just, when I write down in one place, I try to keep it in one place. All right, next, I have Jessica, who is a familiar face to me. If you would come forward, state your name, who you're with, and spell your last name for the record, please.
Okay, good afternoon. I think it's afternoon.
It's afternoon.
Jessica Kelsch, Koelsch, a lot of extra letters. With the National Wildlife Federation, I've actually been following a lot of the counties as they're going through their Pot 1 and the Pot 3 processes, as Commander knows. I've attended many of Walton County's local restore meetings, actually probably most of them. And first and foremost, I want to thank the committee members and the staff because they really have been doing an excellent job. I support that recommended list that's in front of you guys today. Really applaud the inclusion of the Coastal Dune Lake projects as well as the Storm Lake projects. The Deepwater Horizon was first and foremost an ecological disaster, and I think that it's only appropriate to do projects that address ecological needs as well as providing economic benefits, and I think the water quality projects that are in that recommended list do just that. There's basically 2 approaches you could take with the multi-year implementation plan and with your Pot 1 funds. And one is spreading it out across the community and kind of making everyone happy, doing a lot of seed money. Another is focusing on just 1 or 2 key areas and really trying to move the needle and make a difference in those areas. And I think the recommended project list in front of you today kind of does a blend of those 2 things. I think that focusing on that water quality and the stormwater projects, I do think you will be able to move the needle a little bit on improving the water quality in Walton County, and I think that would be a great legacy to leave. We heard a little bit about leveraging with other funding sources. I think Commander is going to be working with the consortium to decide what to do with that funds as well, and really encourage them to continue to take a similar approach with focusing on those needs, on those water quality needs. I think it's a way that we can, that we as the Gulf community and you all as Walton County, that we can really leave a legacy and make a difference on improving the Gulf of Mexico as a whole. So again, I just really want to support what you guys have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the infamous Darrell Boudreaux. And would you state your name?
Good afternoon, Darrell Boudreaux, B as in boy, O-U, D as in dog, R-E-A-U. And I want to echo very much what Jessica just said. Y'all have done a wonderful job. And I also want to just leave you with a quick thought. I think I'm one of the last speakers, but this money is about trying to position our community so that we can withstand other future events like Deepwater Horizon. And I think I was really, really struck with the projects that you're considering and how they do that, from the teaching our kids about alternative, self-supporting farming and really positioning ourselves to be much more resilient. That's really important for the community. And the electronic cars and the 30A issue, again, trying to strategically position ourselves so that we can adapt and withstand the pressures that come at us. So I just really wanted to say thank you. You guys are doing a fantastic job. The committee's done a great job. Staff's done a great job. And you guys are in a very important position, and I can see that you're considering this very carefully, and I just want to say thanks. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. I will say he has worked very well with me on the consortium and trying to get some things done. He's from Pensacola. All right, next we have Andy. Doesn't he look like a younger MC Davis?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Andy McAlexander, McAlexander. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to y'all. It's been about 3 years since we started this organization, and we have made some pretty exciting strides. I think the committee that made the selections on this looked at that as well, with the ranking of the top 4 projects having to do with artificial reefs. I think their annual economic return to the community is pretty well documented throughout the state, and as well as the educational component that we've brought to the table with this particular grant request. Commissioner Meadows, you were with us last year when we had an 8th grade class down there, and the enthusiasm of those students, as well as a 10th grade marine biology class that studies the reefs. And absolutely did not imagine 2-3 years ago, when this process all started, that all of these grants would be coming all together at one with the monies that we've received from other pots of money. When Commissioner Chapman asked if there was a willingness to compromise amongst our organization with the other projects that are in this county, my answer was absolutely. We're all members of the same community. The project was ranked highly because of its potential economic as well as educational return, and we were happy to compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that did not sign up that would like to speak at this time?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, I was watching a lady back there. Ma'am, in the back row, did you want to say anything? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to just discuss these now or what?
We can discuss
One of my suggestions would be, I looked at this, there's 16 projects on here. I think this project with Freeport and 30A and the cars and the education and just the idea that we're going to get on the cutting edge, I think that it warrants a first phase funding of maybe $120,000. And I looked at these. If you took $7,500 off of every project, that's $120,000. And $7,500 off of every project, I don't think it would make or break the project. I don't know. We could ask Melinda, but some of these, it doesn't look like $7,500 would really make or break the project. That would be one suggestion as to how we could fund that, because I think the transportation element is really, traffic, parking, stormwater, the Muskogee Nation's coastal dune lakes, and jobs. I think, those are all rolled into one there.
And I'm just going to ask a question. We have on here the student-led habitat restoration in Walton County. We're trying, hopefully, some of us are going to Wakulla on Friday to see an institute over there, a learning institute as well. Is there a project that maybe we could table until we see, hey, could we get funding from another source like NIFWIF or Game and Fish Commission? I think that project, the student-led habitat, I think I could really see us getting money from Game and Fish or NIFWIF, especially if we can go ahead and get our fishery project here, that we, Commissioner Jones worked on it before I did, Tim Norris has been working, there were a whole bunch of people. So is there a way maybe if we set that one aside until we can see, can we get money from another source? That would be $100,000.
It does,
I don't want to cut it off completely.
But if you read the project description, it's
okay.
It's pretty impactful.
Okay.
It is. It's the Dunes and Schools program that the
Okay.
Tuckatahatchee Basin Alliance has been working on for several years.
I'm just trying to find some money. I'm like Commissioner Meadows. So $7,500 off of each project.
If you took $7,500 off of each project, would that make or break any projects, Melissa?
I don't think it'll make or break any projects, but I can go back and look at the figures anyways because we do have a little bit of flexibility in what I had
Yeah, sure.
total of the
Yeah.
$5.7 million, so I can go back and look at that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like to look at that and see if we couldn't get a first phase of that, some so that they could proceed ahead with their. Sounds like they have a lot of people involved and a lot of activity would come from that.
So is that the only? I know that Muskogee Nation project is already in here.
Yeah, that's in here.
So is that the only project that we need to put in at this time? Yeah, we got you, Miss Ann. Yeah.
It looks like the only project that have come to present a proposal that was not in the new phased.
Yeah.
It was right pretty high.
It was next in line. It was next in line.
So we'll call it the car project.
We'll find a way to get it funded.
Yeah. So I guess what we're asking you to do is find a way to get it funded.
Yeah, for their phase request,
for the phase request.
$120,000, so that because, like I said, these programs are going to go out into the future, and so this is going to give them some.
Years probably longer than some of us will be here, but yet at the same time take all of these projects and maybe you could bring them back to us and say, hey, we think we can get DOT funding for this project, and we think we can get NIFWIF for this project, how we can leverage and combine and that sort of thing,
Commissioners, Melinda, make sure I'm correct, but I think today we're going to actually need a motion to approve these projects with that change, because you're in a time frame.
There's three options here.
Okay.
We can either, obviously, the first one was just to approve the current recommendation list as is. The second option is to approve the recommendation list with any modifications you want to do today, or you can give me direction to go back and look through the phasing and see if there's any wiggle room with the budget where I can incorporate at least this one additional project into the recommendation list. And if we do that, then I can bring it back to the next board meeting, the first board meeting in February, for your approval.
Is there a time issue?
There's not really a time issue per se. It's just the sooner we get it done, the sooner we're going to have access to that money and we can move forward in these projects. But that money is sitting there. There's no problem with that money sitting there, except for the fact that there's no projects moving.
So if we made a motion to approve the list that was presented plus one, do we have to identify that, for instance, did we have to identify that we want to take something? But we said, okay, we're approving the list of the 16 projects plus the one that's presented by Mr. Lyles. Mm-hmm. You come up with the funding. Mm-hmm. That's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Second. We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion among the board?
Now, what if she can't come up with the money? Could I throw something out there that if she can't, then she could shave off $7,500 of each one and then make it?
And I think that's part of what I'm asking.
Is that part of what is that part of, okay.
Come up with a way to do it.
Okay, so that it may include shaving off $7,500 from each project, or $7,000, round that off.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
My motion is we were presented with a list of 16 projects that they were recommending funding. My motion is to approve those 16 plus the 17th, which is the one that Mr. Lyles presented, and that she come up with the way to include that in the funding, whether it's Commissioner Meadows' approach of shaving, whether she's got other methodology to bring it in, but that she get that done.
It would be funding number 17 for phase one activity, which would be $120,000. I think we
120,000.
Yeah, we did. All right, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to what we're doing? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second. Done.
Although he's on the-
Public Works, you have a lot of things to do now.
Y'all, Cindy, they've gone